All right, being 6 o'clock, I'm going to call the Coos Bay City Council meeting to order. Would you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Great seeing everyone here this evening. Thank you for attending. So I'm going to change the order of the agenda. I want to move 5A, which is consideration to amend council rules to adjust the prescribed order of agenda items before public comments. So Nicole, you want to address this?
Gosh, sorry about that. Remember, microphones, gotta push the button. So we've had some discussions internally about the council rules, which are provide some guidance on the order of our meetings. One that was helpful for Christine and I to review that and see we needed some reorganizing of how we were presenting the agenda, even just to begin with. But when we think of our meetings as business meetings and the things that are coming before you require action, giving that time necessary to do that business is important, as well as acknowledging the presenters who come, scheduled to speak, making sure that we're allowing for that time and awareness of their time frame. So in the past, we have had public comments in various places throughout the meeting, and right now it appears that moving it towards the end would allow folks to listen to what we're talking about and speak to that at the end of the meeting. So that's opening the floor.
Okay, so I asked this to be on the agenda for consideration. So in my previous time on the council, it was at the end of the agenda. And I agree with Nicole that we allowed for a business to continue on and then the public comments at the end. The other reason I wanted this to be addressed is that we changed our meetings from 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. And I also noticed that we don't have people always able to get in here. They're running in the door, or not really running, but coming in late past the public comment time. And then we're opening up public comment at the end. So this way, I'm hoping that maybe that will accommodate that also. But this is under council rules, so this is a discussion for the council to decide if they want to change it or not. So to the council for discussion would be, we change it to the end of the agenda, we leave it at the beginning of the agenda, or if you want to, and I would like to do that tonight if possible, but if that's not the case, we can think about it and come back for a decision another time, or we can move it and come back. So there's all kinds of options here, but I would prefer to move it to the end. And so with that being said, I'll open up the discussion to whoever wants to speak on this.
I have no problem moving it to the end. I think it actually gives people time to get home and have some dinner and come back for the meeting.
So to go with the preference to keep it towards the front, I think both ways have their pros and cons, but just from my experience going to give testimony with the commissioners, when it's at the front, I know when it's going to happen and I can plan to get back to work. When it's at the end, I have no idea how long they're going to take and how much time I need to block out to give testimony. So my preference is towards the front, but I can see why the back is good too.
Sarah or Troy?
I suppose I'd like to see it stay at the front too, but I think underlying that, I mean, there's no laws governing where that's up to our discretion to put it. I suppose more importantly, what I'd like to see is a clear understanding of what the public comment period is for, and that is a period for the public to be able to convey their ideas to whichever governing body it is. It is not, however, a period for dialogue or solving issues or problems. It's just simply a period for you to come in and express your viewpoints. And in that vein, I think if we just kept to a schedule, allow the first 10 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever it is, allow people 3 minutes to make their comments. That keeps us on order and on agenda. As I think sometimes it can be confused, as while we call it a public meeting, and it's really just a meeting to do the governing business held in the public. And I think that's an important differentiation. But I will go with the majority on this. But I mean, those are my viewpoints. We should have in the front, we should keep to a time schedule, we should keep people to a specific time limit. We should not engage them in conversations. I think it just makes it much easier to us to be equitably splitting that time across without feeling like that person we listened to and got in a dialogue, well, that person just got 3 minutes and we didn't get to discuss with them. If we just held a policy, get 3 minutes, express your viewpoints, it is important for us to hear those and to listen and to appreciate what's being said. I just don't know that there's much benefit in getting into a dialogue at that period. Thank you.
I, in a rare moment, do not have an opinion on this either way.
Lucinda?
I'm really appreciative of Councilor Cribben's comments. And however, I do think putting them towards the end allows us to stay focused at the business at hand. And I think sometimes when we have public comment at the start of a meeting, I myself can at times become distracted, focusing on those comments and not focusing on the business of the city, which in my mind is the priority. People's comments are always important, but making sure that I'm fully engaged in conducting the business of the city and then leaving space at the end of the meeting to be open to those comments, I think is more productive for me. So that would be my preference.
And Troy, to your point, or Councilor Cribben, to your point, a lot of that is my fault on the conversational piece. I always hoping that we can address the citizens' concerns, whether it's through staff or our dialogue with them. And so part of it's my fault. So instead of it being 3 minutes, it'll end up being 10 or whatever it may be. So anyway, I'll try to keep that in check to some point. Anyway, with that the case, if we want to change this, I need a motion to change the order of the agenda per council rules. If I have a motion, a second, I'll take a vote. If we don't, then it stays where it's at.
Before the motion, where's my head today? Before the motion, I understand what Councilor Cribbins is saying, and I too like that, knowing where it's going to be. But it also tends to be people come because they want to comment on the business that we have at hand, the agenda items, and I think it causes less confusion. So they know the business, they can comment on that. And
I agree.
I
So-
was actually the one, I think, that said I like them at the front, and that's when it changed. They used to be at the end.
So you started this.
I did.
Okay. So that being the case, though, if there's an agreement to change that, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to amend council rules adjusting the order of business by moving public comments to the end of the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to go ahead and change the order of the agenda by moving the public comments to the end. And so that being the case, any more discussion on this?
Yeah, I just want to say that I do appreciate the opportunity to switch this up if it doesn't work. I think
Right.
what's
Absolutely.
great about this council is that we try things, and if it doesn't work, we try something different. And so I'm happy to go with the consensus on this, knowing that we check it out and see how it goes.
And you're absolutely correct, Sarah. So these are council rules that we set for ourselves and guidelines. So these are, they can move and change as we see fit. And I want to make sure that every councilor realizes if there's something on the agenda, on the council rules that wants to be addressed, that you want us to address, please do, and we'll be glad to do so. Anyway, all right? So any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Okay.
All opposed?
Nay, I'll be obnoxious today.
There's two. You and Troy are being obnoxious, so we do have a quorum of 4.
Politely obnoxious.
It's good. Okay, so public comments is at the end of the agenda this evening, and we will move on. First item now will be consideration to approve proclamation acknowledging February as Black History Month. Nicole? Do we have someone here to help to read the proclamation this evening?
I don't believe we do.
Okay.
So
Did you want to read, or you want me to? I don't care.
I can do
Okay.
whichever you would prefer.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll read my part. How's that?
Unless someone else would prefer to read
Anyone
it
else
as
want
well,
to
I
read
would
it
offer
besides
that up.
Nicole? No? All right.
No? All right, so whereas since 1976, every United States president has officially designated the month of February as National Black History Month to honor and affirm the importance of Black history throughout our American experience, and whereas the city of Coos Bay takes pride in joining Americans throughout the country in recognizing February as Black History Month, and whereas African Americans have played significant roles and made lasting contributions to our city's history and the history of Oregon's economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development, while working to contribute to every aspect of American society, including business, education, politics, science, and the arts. And whereas the presence and contributions of Black citizens continue to enhance the quality of life in the city of Coos Bay, and whereas Black History Month calls our nation's attention to recognize and celebrate the essential contributions and resilience of Black individuals while acknowledging the injustices that remained, and whereas Black History Month is a time where all Americans are encouraged to reflect on our history of oppression of African Americans and recommit to prioritizing racial equity, inclusion, and respect for human dignity in all that we do. And whereas, while we celebrate Black History Month in February, we affirm that Black history is American history and recognize it as an ever-present part of our collective experience that we must pass on and learn from. And
Now, therefore, I, Joe Benetti, Mayor of the City of Coos Bay, and on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2024 as Black History Month in the City of Coos Bay, and celebrate Black History Month by embracing the rich African American influence on the arts. Join us in honoring this cultural legacy by enjoying and supporting the work of the African American artists through various forms of artistic expression. So that being the case, Council, if I can get a motion and a second to approve this proclamation, I'd appreciate it.
I move to approve the proclamation designating February 2024 as Black History Month. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the proclamation acknowledging Black History Month. Any discussions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is consideration to rename the permanent art collection at the Coos Art Museum. Nicole?
thank you. And we do have quite a group of folks who
see
are
that. That's
here
great.
to celebrate with us. So I'll kind of give an introduction, and then I'm not sure what you'd like to do from there. But so the City of Coos Bay, for folks who maybe don't know, is the owner of the Coos Art Museum building and the permanent art collection. And we contract out the operation of the art museum to a group of individuals who are proudly managing that space. We've had some communications with some of the art museum board members and staff, and there is interest to acknowledge the volunteer effort of Del Smith, who began as a member with the art museum in 1983. And to complete this acknowledgement, we would like to rename the permanent art collection to the Del Smith Art Collection. We are asking that if there is desire to do so, that we pass a resolution to acknowledge this. From that point, there'll be some efforts to do the naming physically within the space in areas that need that renaming. So.
Okay, so before we move further on with adopting the resolution, does anyone want to make any comments about this, since we have everyone here? The art museum is downtown, and the history museum is on the waterfront. Okay. Did you, Lydia? Okay, good.
Thank you.
You wrote a nice piece about it, about Del.
Yeah, so Natalie Hargraves, who is our curator of collections, taking over for Del. Natalie and I did a little interview with Del last week just to get her history of the place. And Del has really done something really special for this collection, and I think is a testament to who she is as a person, that she doesn't really need this grand recognition. She just wants once. She just is perfectly happy managing the artwork and working with the collection. So we're really happy to have her with us and excited to do this for her.
Thank you, Lydia. Anyone else?
I have a question. Does Tom Wilson's mom still work there, or is she gone?
I don't know.
Worked there forever.
Maybe. So anyway, we'll find out and get to you. All right. So anyone else? All right. So with that,
Yeah, there's,
yes, Tom, how are you doing? And this isn't Tom Wilson.
No, Kenny, I meant Kenny. Tom
Okay.
Kenny.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Hi, I just want to say a couple words about
So,
Dell.
Tom, can you give us your
Can-
name,
can-
please?
What's the matter?
Your name, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tom Foster. I'm Vice President of the Board at Coos Art Museum.
Thank you.
And one of the major reasons that I got on the board was Dell Smith. I walked in there one day. Of course, Dell automatically says, I don't have time for you. And 15 minutes later, you've gotten this great dissertation about the art we have. So she is really a special person, not only in the art museum, but in the community. And what she does with our art is just amazing, because I'm on the board of an art museum, an art institute down in Berkeley, and they do not have anyways near the type of information we have about our art. And you can go in there and you can just say, she'll say, I've got this piece, and you'll look at it, and all of a sudden, it'll just glow in your eyes. And that's a special treat. And I'm really glad you were taking a moment to do that, to recognize her. She's just a truly special person in the community and the Coos Art Museum. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so council, would you like to adopt the resolution changing the art collection's name?
I move to adopt Resolution 2402 to rename the city's permanent art collection to the Dell Smith Art Collection.
second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the resolution 2402, change the permanent art collection name to the Dell Smith Art Collection. Any other comments from the council? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. So Dell, I just want to say thank you for all the work you've done, and I understand that you'll still be continuing on, and I'm glad to some capacity, but it's not the same capacity. I understand that after, I don't know how many years, 20-some years? Yeah, so 20-some years, yeah. So anyway. Yeah, I'm sorry.
40 years.
Yeah, I got to think about, I got it for 40 years, yeah, many years, yeah. All right. And you need to help me with my math. All right, so anyway, thank you so much for everything you've done for the museum. It's much appreciated, and the community.
Before we shut down, we want to give her flowers in front of the council.
Absolutely. You bet. Crowd in here, guys. All right.
So, flowers for you and a card, and we're just happy.
Thank you, everyone, for making it special, and appreciate it. So, next item on the agenda is presentation of Community Emergency Response Team. Mark, are you going to get us started on this?
Sure. So it's my pleasure to introduce Linda Sanders. She is the chairperson of Bay Area CERT, if that's correct title. Anyway, Linda is going to be sharing a little bit with you about what CERT, or Community Emergency Response Teams, are and what they do for us. And with that, I'll let Linda take it away.
Thanks, Linda. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, so my name is Linda Sanders. I am the team lead for Bay Area CERT. Where do I point this? Oh. And I have some other people here that I wanted to introduce. So Mike Wright over here, he is the Bay Area CERT assistant. And then we have some other local teams here. We have Jonathan Hill from Marshfield. Cindy Smith, who is assistant team leader in Hauser, and then Mona Inslee, the team leader at Hauser. There are also, I believe Reedsport has a CERT, and Bandon also has a CERT group. And then we also have a CERT group over in Eastside. So I'm going to talk about what exactly is CERT, what are the benefits of having CERT in our community, and then a little bit more about the Marshfield CERT group. So CERT stands for Community Emergency Response Team. It's an organized group of volunteers trained in a consistent nationwide approach to prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters. That can be really big disasters. It can be smaller, localized disasters. So there are several aspects to this. So they're to assist emergency services personnel when requested in accordance with standard operating procedures, or SOPs, and developed by the sponsoring agency and by area of training. Currently, the sponsoring agency in Coos County is Coos County. In most other areas, CERTs are under a local jurisdiction. Ideally, we would like to fall under the fire department's jurisdiction so that we can be more responsive to them rather than at a county level. Assume some of the same functions and work under the direction of emergency services personnel following a disaster. Prepare families and communities prior to emergencies. And assist neighbors during an emergency when first responders are not immediately available. So a disaster, the definition is basically that there is more people in need than there are people to provide the services. So training. So the CERT course is a 21-hour course. It's a national course, so everyone goes through the same training. It includes a book portion that can now be done online, a hands-on portion that must be done in person, and to focus on likely disasters in our area. So we're not going to be looking really at hurricanes because we really don't have any hurricanes here. So we look at those things that are locally in that particular area. So the topics that are covered in going through the course is basically a preparedness overview. Used to be that you needed to be have 2 days worth of emergency supplies. Now they're saying 2 weeks ready or more, as people are finding out who are living on the other side of that slide, is that, maybe needing to be more prepared than 2 weeks is necessary. You look at Eugene, where they had power outages, and some people were out of power for a week. Other people were out of power for more than that many weeks. Are people ready? So those were small, but being prepared in any big situation or short situation is important. So it goes over the CERT organization. Disaster medical operations, there's 2 components to this. Disaster psychology, how do people react? How do you deal with how those people react? Fire safety and utility controls, so you have to learn how to actually use a fire extinguisher, which a lot of people don't know how to use. They know that, yes, you need to pull and aim, but they may not realize where do you aim when you try to put out the fire. People usually focus on the fire itself, not the base of the fire, which is, they get to practice that. Light search and rescue. terrorism and what is CERT's responsibility. And that has become a bit broader than what we used to think of terrorism being. And then they go through a disaster simulation, and they also have to do a multiple choice test. And I'll talk about more disaster simulations in a little bit. So the benefits of having CERT personnel in your area: more prepared individuals and families. Additional personnel to aid first responders. So we may not be doing the things that the first responders, but we can be doing the things that then they don't have to worry about. Might be keeping people back so they can focus on what they need to do. And help at events. So it doesn't have to be a disaster. It can be helping out at events. So CERT has helped out at the Prefontaine race and things like that. So CERT's in our community. So CERTs are volunteers. When activated and approved, have helped with searching for lost people, traffic control during vaccination pods, help in non-emergency situations. So the Prefontaine Run, which I mentioned, the Fun Festival Parade and other parades, Charleston Fire Department and Coquille Tribe in an active shooter drill that they just held, and help out with 3A tournament security up at the Marshfield Gym, which has a lot of doors that have to be monitored. And then we have also been working on what we call the Barrel Project. We are preparing stashes of emergency supplies around the county. So if we're activated or and we've used up our supplies, then these stashes would be for us to be able to replenish our supplies in the case of a disaster. And our hope is to have a stash at every fire department in the county. So what more could CERT do? Participate in drills and trainings with fire departments so we can better assist them when needed. And we have done some drills with them. So we did do a training where we worked with them on how to do cribbing. So, and lifting up this big or smaller cargo container, which you can't move on your own, but going through that process, you can lift heavy objects. Assist businesses to be disaster prepared. So Bannon CERT actually has a program where they have gone around to try and explain to businesses how they can be better prepared in the event of an emergency, or like when the big earthquake occurs, do they have a plan? What is that plan? Are they ready? Provide CERT training to businesses, to SWAC, to Bay Area Hospital, to schools or other entities. And in fact, a couple of years ago, we did do CERT training with the administrators in the Coos Bay School District, and it was eye-opening to them because there were many things they had not thought about. You know, we practice a lockdown drill, but what if you're locked down for 4 hours? What do? You know, you don't necessarily think through all of those things that you need to think about. So I wanted to talk specifically about Marshfield. So Marshfield has what we call a CERT club. They do fundraising to purchase MHS emergency supplies. We provide them some training. And there are 2 cargo containers on the Marshfield campus. One, the fire department has filled, and the other one, the Marshfield CERT Club has been working on. We had an Eagle Scout who put in the shelving stuff that we have inside it. We have, when they're at the end of a year, when all this clothing, or at the end of a semester, is left behind and is not claimed, we have sorted through it, washed it, stored it. Because if you've seen students who come to school wearing shorts in rainy weather, they may not have a jacket, those kinds of things. They help the campus be more prepared. They have responsibilities immediately following an earthquake. So when we practice an earthquake drill, they don't line up with all the rest of the students. They actually have a place and an assignment. And then there is a disaster science class. So those students go through the entire CERT course. When they turn 18, if they have completed the course, they can register with the local agency. So if they go off to college, they could register with a local agency there. They take that information home to their families, leading them to be more prepared. In fact, one student took the disaster science class, and then his dad took the CERT course himself, and he is now actually the scribe of Bay Area CERT. So the Marshfield campus. It's thinking. In the event of an earthquake during school hours, more than 1,500 students will evacuate to the campus. Currently, those students that are from Millicoma, who are at Blossom, would evacuate up to the Marshfield campus. The junior high would evacuate up to the Marshfield campus. So because Millicoma is there, that's probably over 200 students. So if it happened during a school day, and then we also have businesses that would evacuate up to the campus and local residents that will probably evacuate up to the campus. So the shipping container that we have can aid them also at that time. And Marshfield actually has a full incident command structure plan in place. So who would be the incident commander? Because we would be probably on our own until anybody would come, because who knows? Fire department could have gone someplace and not had, very many people, even though the fire department is close to us. So, and we need to deal with those students on the campus at that time. So we have a full plan in place, and we practice some of the beginnings of that plan. We test to see how long it would take to get supplies out of the shipping container, medical supplies, and delivered to where we will have our medical site. So we practice that. There are things we can't practice. There's still a lot of work to do. So, any questions?
I just want to take this opportunity to 21 hours, all that book studying, and I really want to thank all of you. It's so important to this community, and thank you for giving of your time to serve this community and the citizens in it. So thank you.
So how many volunteers, or how many CERT volunteers are there in this area? Do you know?
Not sure. We had more before COVID, and so some people have dropped out, and we haven't seen them come back to our meetings. We just recently had a training, and I think we had 5 that went through and graduated. So we hope to provide more trainings. I think the hybrid model of them being able to do the book stuff online, because a lot of people, it's hard to say, okay, we're going to do this 2 weekends in a row when you're doing 2 full days in a row, or trying to do it over a period of time and spending a couple of hours each time is difficult. And so being able to do that part online, and then re-emphasizing if they have questions, and then practicing some of the things that they need to do. So, and we started out as that was going to be all in person, but we ended up with it being hybrid.
Okay. Any other questions from the council?
Oh, the other thing I did want to mention is that we have had, about how many students do you think go through?
Probably an average of maybe 35 or 40 per year, and we've been doing it for maybe 6 or 7 years. So maybe 150, 200 students have gone through the training before.
Wonderful.
I know in county that's one, we've had close to 1,000 people attend training
Wow.
in the last decade.
So
Well, I can tell you that I definitely appreciate it and what you do. You've enlightened me. This is much more than I ever thought it was. And so I'm sure glad you're there taking care of it. So thank you. Anyone else?
I was just curious, how many kids take the course, students take the course at Marshfield?
So this year, the first semester that finished up, 22 went through the course. They don't all necessarily complete all the things to be able to register with the county, but if nothing else, they're more prepared and their families are more prepared. And Jonathan said he thinks he has 15 right now.
That's wonderful.
And what I didn't mention, this simulation, which I didn't put up there, there were some pictures, but the simulation that they do is that they're given a scenario, and right now we do it in Pirate Hall with those students, and then they go through and pretend, and we had about 45 victims. A lot of the kids like to participate and be a victim. And so they play victims, and they have medical and search and rescue are the primary. Somebody is the incident commander, and sometimes they'll look to us to give them pointers like, nope. If they do something that in real life might have killed them, we tell them they're dead. Then we give them a moment to think about, well, what did you do wrong? And then say, okay, so now you're probably going to remember and not make that mistake again. So, and we tell them, making mistakes during the simulation, it's stressful. You go in thinking, oh yeah, it's just a scenario. And then you go through it, having done it myself, and your adrenaline goes up because, it feels like the real thing. Kids are screaming, and there are all sorts of things like that, yeah.
Well, thank goodness for all of you that do that, for all of us especially that aren't prepared like we should be. So we appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for coming and making the presentation and enlightening us, all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Janice, you're right, it's your time, and semi-annual presentation by the Coos Bay North Bend Charleston Visitor and Convention Bureau.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City staff, and all of the guests in the room today. I'm Janice Longley. I'm the Executive Director of the Coos Bay North Bend Charleston Visitor and Convention Bureau, which is a mouthful, I will admit, and I really appreciate it every time that I get to come and give our semi-annual report. So we'll start with our budget. As you guys know, we are now a four-legged stool of funding from the City of Coos Bay, the City of North Bend, the Coquel Indian Tribe, and now parts of Coos County around Charleston. This year, our budget, we are about to have a supplemental because we started the year with a little bit less than we anticipated. We have a little bit of a change in cadence of how our money comes into us now, so we're getting used to that, and it's going to be great next year. But we are at 61% of our funding has come in so far, and we've only spent about 44% of what we had budgeted to spend. We do have two distinct departments, the VCB part, which is the Visitor and Convention Bureau, the Destination Marketing arm, and then we have the Visitor Information Center, which we have an agreement with the City of Coos Bay, separate from the VCB agreement, to manage the information center here in town. So that's got its own budget as well. Every year I tout the county's visitor spend. I've come to you guys for years now and talked about the amount of money that visitors spend in our county every year. In 2022, which is the last year we have data for, visitors spent $295.9 million in Coos County. So my board asked me to figure out how to present a return on investment amount. So how much that we do as an agency, as an organization, what we spend, how much of that brings money back in. We can't count all of it, and we certainly can't count what happens in the rest of the county. So we contracted with the same company that gives the state this data of $295.9 million for the county level to give us the amount for Coos Bay, North Bend, and Charleston only. So in 2022, visitors spent $137.2 million in our three communities. That's 46% of the county's total. That was up from 2021, but if you look at the graph on the bottom, this is what our dashboard looks like, and you look at the blue line on the left, that was 2018 to 19 went up. 19 to 20, of course, went way down because of the pandemic. 21, you can see it kind of went up again, and in 22 it went up, but it didn't return to 2019. However, the county exceeded 2019's numbers. So in 2019, the county was at 277 million. So we have a little bit of work to do. Some of that is Bandon, some of that is Bandon Dunes, some of that is just other monies around the county. So I wanted to show real quick, this is a lot of data and it's very hard to see. What I'm trying to illustrate here is that there are 6 categories that we look at towards spending: accommodations, food service, gas and local transportation, food and beverage stores, retail sales, and then arts, entertainment, and recreation. And for our area, our 3 communities, we were up over 21 in all but the arts, recreation, and entertainment category. So we still have a little bit of work left to do in that area, and a lot of things truly that people do here don't cost anything. You can go hiking anywhere and it doesn't cost you anything. If you own your kayak, you can go kayak anywhere. If you own your own skates, you can go ice skating for free. So there's a lot of things that don't cost a lot of money. But for the county itself, they were up double digits in every category in 2022 over 2021. So then I looked at 2019 because I wanted to see how we compared, especially in our 3 communities. As you can see, we are not back up to 2019. In 2019, visitor spending in our 3 communities was almost $150 million. We are up in accommodations. We are up in gas and transportation. Some of that is the airport. And we were even with our food and beverage stores, but everything else we're still lagging behind. And as you know, during the pandemic, our restaurants really suffered. Our retail really suffered. And so did things like our art museum and our history museum and things like that. So we still have a little ways to go. And so does the county in some of these categories as well. All right, okay, so return on investment. This is what we needed this data for. So return on investment is calculated as a percentage of the visitor spending influenced by what we do. I cannot say that we influence every dollar that comes here. I can say that we influence some of that. We know in the advertising world that it takes 7 to 10 times for a person to see an ad before they will ever take an action. That means clicking a link, buying a product, even thinking about a destination that they want to go to. So we didn't know what percentage we could say we influenced. So we looked to our industry, and Travel Oregon, who is our state organization, counts about 5% of what of visitor spending in the state of Oregon is influenced by their advertising. Now, it makes sense because there's a lot of DMOs like us who are also influencing that travel. We think that's rather conservative. Conversely, Visit Florida believes that they influence 40% of all the spending done in the state of Florida. I think that's a little bold. So we looked to the University of Massachusetts, who has a model, and if you want to know what this model is, I'm happy to share it with you later, but it's very long and involved, and the upshot is they believe that about 15% of destination marketing influences a visitor to come to a destination and spend money. So that's the number we're using. So to figure ROI, you take the visitor spend, you multiply it by the percentage of influence, you subtract what you spent to get those visitors here, and you divide that number by how much you spent. So if we take the 137.2 million and we multiply it times almost 15%, that is $20,168,000 influenced by the Visitor and Convention Bureau. We spent about $728,000 in 2022. That's advertising, marketing, trade shows, things like that. And so our ROI is $26.70. For every $1 we spend, $26.70 is brought back into our community in the form of visitor spending and taxes. That's lodging, restaurants, arts and recreation, and all those other things that were in those categories ahead. I think that's pretty good. I will tell you, and I have to find my piece of paper where I did the calculations. Oops, I missed the page. Here we go. If we were so bold as to think like Visit Florida, we would have brought back $74.40 for every dollar we spent. However, if we were as conservative as the state of Oregon, our ROI would be down to $8.42. So we kind of like our 15% number at $26.70. So, and again, if anybody has any questions about that, I'm happy to go into it in detail, but we'll move on. If I can get this, okay, So I just wanted to talk about some big things we've been working on. As you guys remember, in '22, when holiday lights came back, the state of the Parks Department put in the parking passes. It was very confusing to people. One, they thought they had to buy a pass for everybody in the car, not just the car. They also didn't want to pick a night. Nights were sold out, so some things got a little heated in 2022. So in '23, we went after grants. The Visitor and Convention Bureau took it upon ourselves to go after grants to start a shuttle service to the lights. Now, we couldn't go every night. It cost too much to rent buses for every night of the week. So we chose 21 nights, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, plus all the holidays. And we provided busing from the Charleston Marina to the lights back and forth on those nights. The buses themselves cost us $22,000, but we got $30,000 in grants from Travel Oregon and the Ford Family Foundation, which covered all of that cost, plus a temporary staff person and some signage and things like that. We took 4,100 passengers to the lights. Now this year, I had a meeting with the Bridgems and the state parks, that's the Friends of Shore Acres and the state parks, and there were 53,000 people who came to the lights this year, which is about average. We're getting back to pre-pandemic numbers for them, and 4,100 of those went by shuttle. There were still a lot of open spaces this year. They did not sell out every night, so messaging got out that you were just buying a pass for your car, but it also allowed people an opportunity who, one, don't have a credit card and can't book online, don't have a computer and can't book online, didn't want to book ahead because they want to go on the night they want to go. We're not going to get grants next year. So we'll be looking to some corporate partners to help us cover the cost of these buses. Now, next year's holiday lights, for everybody who's in the room, is going to be shorter because Thanksgiving is on the 28th. That means it's going to be 34 nights instead of 39 nights of holiday lights. So there'll be fewer nights of shuttle, and we're moving it from Thursday, Friday, Saturday to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because we got a lot of requests for Sunday night. So, and we didn't have as much ridership on Thursdays as we thought. So some things to think about is that we'll be looking to our corporate partners to sponsor some nights of the shuttle coming up. I'm sorry, I can't take questions at this time. Okay.
Why don't you get one of these buses that are already going around to donate one? They can write it off. You keep it every year.
Yeah. Well, I wish that would happen, but that's not likely. All right, so some recent ads we've done. This is a 3-page spread we do with the Chamber of Commerce every year. It talks about, what there is to see and do. This goes out not only to people who are in our community already, but people who are looking to move here. We send out what we call relocation packets, and this is the primary piece of information that goes to people looking to move to Coos Bay or North Bend or Charleston. We are doing a whole lot less print advertising now and a whole lot more digital and social. Now, these are not posts or boosted posts. These are actual ads that we do through our social media. These are Facebook. We do them for holiday lights and storm watching, our big events that are coming up, and then we do some that we're just trying to get people to like us and share and things like that. But holiday lights is big. So we do this up. We spent $70,000 or more, almost $80,000 just promoting holiday lights this year. And that's digital ads and billboards up and down the I-5 corridor, all over Portland, Eugene, Medford, Grants Pass. And then we do what we call sponsored content. So these 2 pictures to the right, center and right, are newsletters that went to the readership of publications. The middle one is Northwest Travel and Life. The far one is 1889 and 1859 magazines. So they look like us. They're all of our content, but they went to their readers. And of course, we promoted not only holiday lights, but the ice skating rink and the Festival of Trees and things like that. Storm watching is also big. And tomorrow at the Bay Area Chamber of Commerce, I'll be talking about the difference between storm watching and king tides. If anybody wants to come to lunch, you'll get an education. Again, we do a lot of print. For this particularly, if you see that QR code on the top right left picture, we get people to scan that QR code and watch our video about storm watching, and we get a lot of response from this. This is how we can track printed advertising, because you can't track it any other way. Again, billboards, digital, and sponsored content newsletters. I wanted to show some of our statistics from social media. Our impressions went up 48% and now these are calendar years, so from 22 to 23, our reach doubled because of our print and organic ads, and our engagement also went up. That video views number, 212,000, that's how many video views on Facebook we had in all of 23. In January of 24, we had 226,000 views that month. So that number is going to be shot out the water next year. So again, we're also on Instagram. We now have a TikTok channel where we had almost 24,000 views. We have a lot of videos on YouTube. We don't count followers. I mean, how many of you actually go to YouTube channel and actually click to subscribe or follow? So, but we did have 226,000 views. So lots of views. Our next promotion, big, this is the first time we've actually really promoted in a big way the Clambake Music Festival. This is a promotion we're doing with Willamette Week. So that newsletter went out to Willamette Week readers. It went out on January 29th, and within 2 hours we had 319 entries, and they're winning a trip to the music festival, all access passes, a 3-night stay at the Mill, plus dining at Back Alley and the Blue Heron. And we're doing 2 of these. We're doing one with Willamette and one with the Oregonian or Oregon Live. So we're very excited about that this year. This gets our name out. It gets people thinking about coming here for other things besides our outdoor adventure. And then finally, I'll talk about our visitor center. In 23, we had 18,900 visitors walk through the door of the visitor center. We have a lot of volunteers, but we can always use more. If anybody wants to volunteer, we always can use more volunteers at the visitor center. But we had 3,200 volunteer hours. We sell merchandise, and we sold about 28,000, a little over 28,500 in merchandise sales. Now, this is not a cash cow for us. We use this to get our brand out. We have a lot of branded merchandise. If you haven't been in the visitor center recently, we invite you to come back. We've mailed 11,700 visitor guides to people who requested specifically our information through Travel Oregon and through our own website. And the relocation packet I talked about with the Bay Area Chamber of Commerce, we sent 48 of those to people who are looking to move here to the Coos Bay area. We had visitors from 20 countries and every state except Maine and New Hampshire, except that at Holiday Lights, they had somebody from New Hampshire. So we're going to say we had people from New Hampshire too. So this year it's only Maine who didn't come. And that is my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Janice?
Just a couple of silly ones, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think you answered my question with the county being increased. You related it to Bandon Dunes and probably the Whiskey Run trails.
Yes. Yes. So and so what Dean Runyon, that's the company that provides this data, says is that between Bandon itself and Coos Bay, North Bend, Charleston, we kind of do the lion's share of the amount for the county, but Bandon Dunes is very important in that. And people who go to Whiskey Run are staying in either Bandon or here.
And then, like the retail and the food areas that were lower,
Yes.
you think that's maybe related to some of those businesses closing because of the pandemic and not opening, so availability of itself was just not there?
That's correct, yes. So we did see quite a few, we did lose some businesses. We lost full-service restaurants that went more to that self-serve or, you order at the counter and then they might bring it to you kind of scenario. So yeah, there was a lot of that.
And then lastly, and thank you for humoring me, if you said it, I missed it. Why are there no grants for the buses this year?
Well, we could maybe go after other grants. We won't get grants from the same organizations, and these are the organizations that would most likely, which is why we went after them the first time, most likely give us grants for something like this.
Thank you.
And they had to be, we actually had to have accessible buses, because that was one of the grants, the grant we got from Travel Oregon required an accessible component, so wheelchairs and scooters and things like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lucinda?
Janice, I just want to be clear that the numbers we're talking about are from 2022, though, correct?
That's
2023 will come out probably closer to May.
Towards the middle to the end of May.
Okay, wonderful. And I, as a member of the BCB board, we are so incredibly lucky to have you leading the organization and the team that is in place. We have worked really hard to, over the course of the last few years, we have challenged Janice on ROI many a time, and I'm so glad that we have finally found a way to answer that question. I think as a board, we owe that to the funders, and so I commend you for making that happen. And I really appreciate you focusing on the county and our region specifically. Bandon Dunes never touts itself enough, and they do so much for this community, and so it was nice to see really how those dollars kind of shake out. So thank you very much for all of your efforts and the work that you're doing on behalf of this community.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Janice, a couple things. First of all, you talked about the county and us, but you work collectively with everyone in the county. You're on the TSOC board, and we work with Bandon, TSOC, Reedsport, all the way down to the coast, right?
Correct.
So, and even Whiskey Run, you promote quite a bit.
Yes.
And so even though that's in Bandon or in the county, we still are promoting that and getting some benefits out of it.
Yes, well, we also promote things like Golden and Silver Falls, which are not technically in our area, but
Right.
it's easier to get there from here.
Right.
So there are a lot of things. We promote water skiing in Lakeside because it's the only place you can go water skiing, in case you didn't know that.
And I think what we've learned, and I'm an advocate for tourism, as you know, but if we collaborate and work together, we are able to draw and keep people here on a longer period of time. That's the whole point behind all of this.
Exactly. And TSOC, I'll just put a plug in for them right now. That's the Travel Southern Oregon Coast Organization. They are the regional destination marketing organization for our Reedsport to Brookings, is receiving an award from Travel Oregon for their partnership, especially around Whiskey Run. So we're really proud to be part of that and working together collaboratively for the South Coast.
And Lucinda mentioned Bandon Dunes and what a advocate they are for our community. TSOC is strictly funded through Bandon Dunes. So, you know, I mean, they really are good community partners. So when
Yes.
did you come to work here?
When did I come to work? I came to work here in September of 2017.
So the picture looks a little bit different. In 2016, some of us were elected to the city council. At that time, the VC budget was $350,000. In 2017, Janice came on. So I just want to show you the picture that's changed. It's 1.3 million now.
That's
And
correct.
so I commend you for the job you did and the board. And so tourism's an economic driver, as I say many, many times, and I'm sure many of you are tired of hearing it, but it is, and sometimes I think we just need to keep that in front of us. So Janice, thank you. Anyone
you.
else?
I just wanted to say thank you for the breakout of the ROI. I think, you know, we all feel it and we see the difference since you've been doing this, but I appreciate the board and you breaking that out so we have actual dollars that we can see. So thank you for all you do
Thank
for
you.
our area.
Thanks, Janice.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, next item on the agenda is presentation from the Coos Bay Police Department. Chief Chapinar, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for allowing me a little bit of time to talk about the police department. A couple weeks ago, I think it was Councilor Stevens had asked if you guys could receive a report from the police department on specifically on crime stats and just how those stats relate to previous years. And so I am going to get into that, but I thought Just prior to that, I thought I would give a little context about our department, talk a little bit about what makes the Coos Bay Police Department and the North Coos 911 Center. And I know you guys have a big agenda tonight, and so I will tell you that I did not have Chief Anderson help me with this PowerPoint presentation, so the slides are going to only be a few. So that's Coos Bay Police Department. A few years back, we adopted a kind of a new brand for our North Coos 911 Center, and so that is their patch, and then that's obviously the Coos Bay Police Department patch. Now, we are one, but we have two separate patches as well. So, the Coos Bay Police Department has a mission statement, and we try to carry out that mission daily, and it's to efficiently provide quality law enforcement services to our community by promoting a safe environment through a police-citizen partnership with emphasis on mutual trust, integrity, fairness, and professionalism. A few years back, we really broke down that mission statement as a department, and we looked at it, and we even considered maybe making some changes to it, but once we started really looking at it and breaking it down, we're like, no, that absolutely hits exactly what our mission as a police department and a 911 center is. So each year we get together as a department, we have an annual department meeting, and we take a look at our mission, and then we come up with a vision as well, and I present the vision to the department at that meeting. And so this year's vision for our department, and a vision helps us achieve the mission, but obviously a vision is going to change from year to year depending on where you are as an organization. And so we have a lot of younger police officers, dispatchers, new to the profession, and so one of our main things is to continue to train, mentor, develop, and advance each other. It's important that we are trying to advance each other, help each other, and get better. We're determined every day to become better, more professional, more competent in every aspect of our jobs. This year's theme is kind of choosing to go the extra mile, serve and protect our community with excellence, professionalism, and integrity. Our theme is always choosing the high road and the road less traveled to accomplish our mission. How do we do that? So we come up with, a few years ago, we came up with some core values. And I really didn't know how important these core values was to my team until we really started, talking about it. And this year, and I'll get to these four, sorry. This year at our department meeting, I just called on 4 of our staff members and asked them to explain one of these core values in what it meant to them. And I got to say, I was pretty well blown away on the responses that I got. It was pretty in-depth. They really have adopted these core values. We have now put them on our back of our new police cars. You'll see the 4 core values. We believe that with using these values is how we'll carry out our vision and ultimately our mission. And so it's honor, integrity, excellence, and teamwork. If you go, if you're on a tour and come into the police department, you'll also see those in the admin area right outside my office and my 2 captains' offices up on the wall. So a little bit about our department. We basically, there's 47 of us altogether. That does include a few of our volunteers. And so I know this organizational chart's really hard for you to see, but I'm going to kind of walk us through it just briefly. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but this is basically how our department breaks down. We have 24 sworn police officers, and we have 14 certified 911 dispatchers. In addition, we have 3 records specialists. We have an evidence technician. We have a chaplain. We have a couple of police reserves, and that number fluctuates from time to time. Currently, we have 2. And then we have a volunteer program that runs around and enforces the disabled parking program, and we currently have 2. And so basically how our police department's broke down is obviously there's the chief, and we have 2 additional administrators, and those are my 2 captains. And actually they're both here tonight, Captain Mike Schaefer and Captain Tom Lindahl. And Captain Schaefer just got out of a pool board meeting, so that's why he was hoping to be able to make this presentation as well. So currently, my 2 captains, one oversees operations and the other one oversees administration. Those roles we change after they sit in those roles a year or 2, then we switch them so that way they become familiar with all the duties of the department and learning the administrative side and the operations side. Currently, Captain Mike Schaefer is overseeing administration, and over administration we have that's where our 911 center sits, and we have 2 communication supervisors, 911 supervisors, who oversee their platoon, and I think there's a typo there. It's actually 6 and 6, so it's a total of 14 in that 911 center. In addition, the administrative captain will oversee the criminal investigation unit. Currently, I have 3 investigators in that unit. And he also will oversee the specialty units, our school resource officer, our community resource officer, our disabled parking, and any other special unit that we might have. We have, like I mentioned, we have our 3 records specialists. We have 1 supervisor in that unit and 2 record specialists. And then we move over to the operations side. Operations is where most of the sworn police officers are under. We have we run 4 shifts. We have 4 supervisors or sergeants, and each sergeant oversees a platoon of 3, so a total of 4, including themselves. And they're basically responding to all of our calls for service and our patrol-related calls. In addition, the operations captain will oversee our evidence technician and also our reserve police officers. Any questions so far? All right. So that's kind of, this next slide is basically what I just described to you. That's kind of our department. The chief. That's me, Chris. All right. So the next slide is where we're going to start getting into the stats. And prior to that, I thought I would just give just a couple minutes on information about crime stats and data. I'm sure most of you are familiar with uniform crime reporting, the FBI crime stats, and those are the national crime data that is published. In January 2021, UCRs actually became NIBRs, and that's a National Incident Based Reporting System. And so that's what NIBRs stands for. It's essentially the same as of UCRs, but it's now just a new name, and they have changed some of the ways that law enforcement agencies report that data. But that basically is the national database where anybody, it's public information, they can go on and they can take a look at reported crime stats for various areas. What I'm going to provide with you to you tonight is what I would call more of a raw crime stats, raw data. And what I mean by that is when we report our crimes to NIBRs, we take those crimes and then we recategorize them based off of a very specific way that they want them reported. And so what they're doing is they're requiring us to report very specifically, but then they are looking for broad type of crimes. So an example, if we have a criminal trespass and a theft, then when we report that to NIBRs, that would actually be reported as a burglary. So those stats have grabbed 2 crimes and then they've made it more broad. And so, and that's so that way they can capture all the national crime data that they need to capture and present it in a very systematic way. What I'm going to provide to you is I'm actually going to break that out. I'm going to provide to you the raw data. So how I get our data, and Captain Lindahl should be credited for most of this work. He did an outstanding job pulling most of this that data for me. But how we did it was we actually looked at our calls for service, how when an officer responds to a call for service, when they clear, they either give a verbal disposition or they take a case number or they're going to refer or they take a custody or they're going to refer something to the DA's office. That disposition gets entered into our CAD system, which is our records management system, our RMS, and that gets entered into that system. So we pulled that information directly out of our system. So this is true raw data of what our officers are responding to and what's occurring in the Coos Bay area. This is specific. We obviously dispatch for more than just Coos Bay, but this is specific to Coos Bay's calls for service. And so I just kind of wanted to set the stage on that when we look at this. So this first page is just reflecting on 2023. There's a lot of numbers up here. I'm going to walk us through a few of these, but the next slides, the next 2 or 3 slides is, I think, where you'll probably really want to focus some attention on. So in 2023, the total calls for service that Coos Bay Police Department responded to was 35,946 calls for service. Those are police-related matters. A little bit about that. If you look at the way that our platoons are structured, we work a 3 on, 3 off. I mentioned earlier we have 4 platoons. They work 12-hour shifts. So you have 3 to 4 officers on a 12-hour period, 3 to 4 officers on the night 12-hour period. And so that's how it makes up to 24 hours, 24/7. If you break that number down, it's basically, I always say it's about 100 calls. It's actually about 98 calls for service in a 24-hour period. If you look at, generally we have 3, if we're lucky we'll have 4 officers on, and you break that down, you're generally looking at about 16 calls for service per officer per shift. Now, obviously, that's not completely accurate because some of these cases may have to be investigated by an investigator, or it may be a school resource officer that's not responding to those calls for services. But it gives you a general sense. That 16 calls also, they have to account for drive time, report writing time, investigative time, search warrant writing, running down leads, sometimes testifying in court, all those things that take away from your ability to actually just be out there responding to calls. So it translates, 35,946 calls for service translates to extremely busy. We are very busy. The next number is case numbers. 42, this is just 2023. 4,244 case numbers. Generally what that means is that is a situation where custody was made, a referral is going to be made to the DA's office. There was property that was seized. There was a reason why we had to go a little bit more than just a calls for service or an L number is what we would call a log number. We had to actually take a case number. The 1,495 arrests and referrals, I'm going to break that down into another slide, but essentially that is custodies and things that were referred to the DA's office for criminal charges. 233 criminal citations. We conducted 3,159 traffic stops. We responded to 179 traffic crashes. We arrested 75 DUIs. We wrote 2,043 violation citations. We responded to 232 criminal trespass, 157 criminal mischiefs, 495 thefts, 145 burglaries. We took 116 stolen vehicle reports. We responded to 172 assaults. And those assaults range from harassment to assault 1 through 4. That's how Oregon classifies their assaults. Harassment's obviously the lowest, assault 1 is the highest. This next number, 21 domestic assaults, Oregon doesn't actually have a crime of domestic assault. Now, there is a statute that throws an assault into a domestic category, but domestic assault is really, really hard to track. That number is very low, but that number is if it was actually classified as in our records management system as a domestic assault, it got a stat. I will say out of that 172, a lot of those 172 number on those assaults would also fall into that domestic category. We're responding to more than just 21 domestic assaults, unfortunately. 41 sex crimes, that's just the major ones, sex abuse, rape, and sodomy. We conducted 2,574 patrol checks. That number, I'm going to showcase that number a little bit later. That's kind of an important number. We wrote 96 search warrants. We assisted other agencies 119 times. We responded, our investigative team responded out on major crimes call-outs where we assisted other agencies with their major crimes 4 times, 6 crash team call-outs, and 11 emergency response team deployments, which is a SWAT team. Our community resource officer made 1,308 contacts. We addressed 399 camping violations, and our total calls that came through our 911 center, and this is amazing, is 90,623 calls. We processed, this was being conservative, but we processed over 4,445 pieces of evidence. Our canine was deployed 41 times. Our officers received about 4,900 hours of training, which is extremely important. We integrated this year an actual PIO program. We identified a PIO, sent her off to some training, and we're continually sending her off to training on PIO. We've kind of started revamping that program, which I think is important.
Chief, what's PIO?
I'm sorry, Public Information Officer. So they're the ones that's gonna, you're probably, if you're reading press releases, it's probably going to be written by our PIO, or if there's a special interview, our PIO will probably come and do that interview. We have a process, though, that we work through, so we make sure that we're all on the same board, on the same page when we're putting out press releases as well. So, we obviously underwent a Coos County, or North Coos 911 remodel. And I'm hoping at the end of this month or beginning of next to invite you all to a tour of that facility. It's turning out really amazing. Okay, so what does all this mean? So here's kind of getting down into the nuts and bolts. So this first column right here is 2023. That's the numbers I just read off to you. This next column is 2022. This number right here, directly under the 2023, is the percentage between the 2 years. So as we move down, so in 2022, we had 3,472 calls for service. This last year, we had 35,946. That's a 5% increase. So if you kind of see how this graph is working, this number right here is a percentage based off of 2020 and 2023. It's a point in time percentage. So this, for the entire year of 2020, we had 30,846. The entire year of 2023, we had 35,946. That is a difference of 17%. So that's a point in time percentage based off of 20 to 23. I wanted to give you a 5-year look back, but if you remember in 2019, we had to change our records management system. We went back to the original system we were using, and the data's still there, but I wanted to make sure that I was providing you guys raw data that was very consistent from year to year. So it's a very much an apples for apples comparison. All these stats were pulled exactly the same way for each year, and I couldn't do that with 19 with any degree of confidence, and so 19 was left off. So you can see as we work our way down through here, we, in the total calls, between 22 and 23, we're at a 5% increase. Between 21 and 22 was a 7% increase. And between 20 and 21, we had a 4% increase, with a total of 17% increase from 20 to 23. And we can work our way down through these. Our case numbers this year are 3% down, and you might ask, why is that when your calls for service are up? That would be probably due to the way that we are trying to find more efficient ways to document some of our calls for service. We're learning that our records management system, we can use L numbers. They will still become a permanent record. We're not pulling as many case numbers for things that can be documented through our log numbers. So that number is down a little bit, but you can see from year to year it kind of fluctuates right around there. Total number of arrests, we literally basically had a repeat of last year. But if you look at the previous year, between 21 and 22, it was a 11% increase. DA referrals, so that number that I gave you earlier, that 1,495, those were those two numbers combined. Both of these mean the same in terms of both of these were either arrests or reports were sent to the DA's office for prosecution. So those are essentially arrests. Criminal citations, this number is down 59%. The reason is because, and this is a huge factor, last year, if you remember, the jail was not taking anybody. The jail was essentially closed. So the majority of our criminal contacts, we were issuing citations instead of trips to jail. Once the jail started opening up to the capacity they're at now and allowing for a booking process, you see that numbers dropped 59%. This number right here, the 233, is more likely than not 90% of those did not meet jail criteria. Maybe they were intoxicated to a point that the jail couldn't take them. Maybe they were had a mental issue that they would not take them. There's some criteria that the jail has put that they won't take them if they don't meet the criteria. So there's still a number of citations being issued in lieu of custody, but we're starting to see that number drop, which I believe is a good thing. Traffic stops, you can see that they kind of bounce around. We were up 1% this year. On the very top number? Yes. That's total calls for service, but it's police-related calls for service. So a police officer either responded out there, had to call somebody back, or send them out a citizen self-report or something of that nature. It's a call for service. Traffic crashes. We're down 14%, which makes us happy. I think we'd like to see that number come down even more. But those are things that we don't necessarily are able to control other than through maybe some traffic enforcement, which if you look at the previous slide, traffic stops, we are up, maybe not where I'd like to see them yet. DUI arrests, and if you see something that you want me to stop on, please let me know, but I'll kind of buzz through this for sake of time. DUI arrests, we're up 9%. Violation citations, this is generally a result of a traffic stop or something of that nature that received a violation citation. Criminal trespass is down 29% from last year. So the reason is, again, it's the trip to jail. It's the booking process. So what we were seeing last year, we were seeing a tremendous amount of repeat offenders within the same day even. We would go out, we would respond, they would be criminal trespassing, we would issue them a citation for that criminal trespass. essentially couldn't do anything more with them other than we implemented towards the end of the year, bringing them back to the station and going through a cite and release process, and that would remove them from that area, which kind of helped limit that repeat offender situation. But now that we are able to take them to jail under most circumstances for a booking process, it removes them from that place, and the repeat issues are not as often, and you can see that numbers dropping. Same with the criminal mischief. People now know that if they commit the crime, more likely than not, they're at least going to be taken to jail for a booking process. That's why that is so extremely important. Theft is down 16%. Again, I contribute that to the fact that if you get caught, you're going to probably go to jail and at least go through the booking process. Now, burglaries. This is a number that's got me kind of scratching our heads a little bit. This one's up. This one's up 16%. You know, I guess there's a lot of different maybe thoughts behind that, but that's kind of where we're sitting right now. We do know some of the more prolific burglars in our area are now being released out of, they've served their prison time or sentence time, jail time, and they're being released back into the community. So we're seeing that increase. Stolen vehicles, I said we had 116, it's down 11%. Assaults are up 28%, 172. And there's our domestic number again. I believe that number's really low. Yeah.
Sorry. During COVID, I thought I heard, I don't know where I heard this, so forgive me, that a lot of people weren't able to, they didn't feel comfortable to call the police for domestic assaults or sex abuse cases, and they weren't reported, is my point. So we're saying that they've gone up, but is that probably because we're through the pandemic and things are more normalized?
I think that would definitely play a factor. I mean, you bring up a really good point. You know, obviously this data and what we respond to is based off of what people report. And so we do know, especially when you're dealing with domestic assaults and you're dealing with some of the sex crimes, that sometimes victims do not want to report, and for various reasons. And yes, I believe COVID had a major factor in that as well. I think we might be seeing more people willing to report. You know, COVID kind of shut everything down, and so that definitely could be a contributing factor. You know, it's just sometimes those types of crimes don't get reported as well for whatever reason. I don't know if I answered your question, but
You did, thank you.
Patrol checks. So I said I was going to bring this up. So one of the things that has been really kind of on our top agenda as administrators is we want our officers out there doing checks, doing patrol checks, driving through the boat ramps, checking property watch. Folks that have signed up to be on, businesses that have signed up to be on the property watch, driving through parking lots, John Toppett's parks. So we've really been driving that, and you can see that trend. We started in 2020, 963. We went up to 1,164, 1,620, and now we're up to 2,574. Those are documented patrol checks where they radioed out and gave a disposition of a patrol check. We know that that's occurring a lot more, but sometimes they don't air it out. They'll drive through a parking lot or something and they do that patrol check, but they don't air it out. But those are actually documented. So you can see that steady increase. We're not where we want to be yet. We're going to try to increase that number, but I think they're doing a fantastic job.
Can you give an example of a disposition that they
So they would log a patrol check at a various location, and so that would actually be a logged patrol check. So then our dispatchers would document that with that verbal disposition. We're getting a little more fancy now in vehicles. We have MDTs or computers that they'll soon be able to do a disposition off of that computer, and it documents that actual patrol check. So when I get people call in and say, I haven't seen an officer in the area in X amount of years, I can pull that information up, and that's why it's important for us to have those documented patrol checks, because I can see, do we have an issue? Do we need to try to direct our officers to this area or that area or this park or whatever? So those are really important to us. We know that that's happening. I mean, it's just our nature in our training that when you're driving around the streets, you're always looking, you're doing patrol checks. I mean, that's what you're out in your car doing. But the documented patrol checks are really important to us, so that way we can track that.
That doesn't necessarily mean that something was happening. That just means that you had presence there.
Yes, that just means we were out. So, but as a result of those patrol checks, I believe you're seeing, like for instance, property watch. If we're out and we're checking those areas and we see something happening, a criminal trespass, a criminal mischief, then that obviously is going to go on one of those other stats that I just provided for you. But it gets our officers out there. It's a proactive way of, just checking on our city and just keeping some of those livability issues down. Just a few more slides. 96 search warrants, we're up 20%. I know I've mentioned to you guys in the past that sometimes, and one of the real reasons why we was looking for a tow contract is a lot of our work now is requiring search warrants. And you can see the increase. Back in 2020, not that long ago, we only wrote 34 search warrants as a department. We're up 182% to today now, 96 search warrants. Those search warrants can be anywhere from 4 pages to 20 pages, and they can take anywhere from an hour to 6-7 hours. One of them recent cases we've just worked, I think it was a couple days effort to get a search warrant written. So it is a tremendous amount of time. And that just keeps increasing, and that's due to case laws, and that's due to the requirements put on the officers to develop probable cause for their cases. Overdose, you can see the overdoses are incrementally increasing. So overdoses is a really, and I know that's kind of a hot button and a stat that a lot of people want to focus on, and it's relatively difficult for us to pull perfect and accurate numbers on that, because overdoses can come in at all different ways. They can come in as a medical, they can come in as a suicidal subject, they can come in as an overdose. They can just come in all different ways, and so what we have there is actual overdose numbers that we feel is we can stand behind those numbers and say those are numbers that are actually documented as overdoses in our records management system. The numbers are higher if we just look at like medical assists and we look at suicidal subjects and stuff like that, some of the other classifications that we have in our system. But again, I was really trying to provide you guys with the raw data and paint the picture of what's really happening out on the streets, and have the numbers show that as well.
Is there a separate documentation for the ODs that result in fatalities?
The medical examiner keeps that.
Okay.
We don't, and through this too, we're learning that there may be ways that we could get better. Oh, I know there's ways we can get better, but ways that we can get better at documenting some of this and tracking some of this. So we're going to maybe take a look at implementing some additional codes in our records management system that'll help us pull some of this information out a little bit easier and better. Major crimes, again, I said we went to 4. 6 crashes on the crash team, 11 SWAT team deployments, 1,308 CRO contacts. This camping violation, again, this has been a focus. We're looking at enforcing our ordinances, educating, connecting people with resources. This doesn't always mean punitive. This just means that we're out there and we're addressing camping violations, whether it's connecting them to services or oftentimes it does result in some type of enforcement. But the numbers have increased, and this last year it was 399. Sorry, didn't mean to hit you with the. And so 399, and then North Coos 911, 90,623 calls that came through the center, and 4,900 hours of training. So that was kind of in a nutshell, but I'm open for questions. Hold on one second. Let me see if council has any questions.
Wow, thank you very much for putting those stats together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are things to celebrate. So thank you to the entire team. Second, can we get a copy of this so councilors can study it more closely? And lastly, it might be easy to say that crime's down in Coos Bay, North Bend, the county, but really the challenge is that we don't have a fully functioning jail. And so while some of those numbers look like they're going down, it's just we can't send them to the jail, and that's currently the world we live in. Is that correct?
It is, and sometimes we hear this often, and I'm sure you guys hear it as well, that sometimes people say, I didn't report it because why? Nothing's going to happen. And so we know that a lot of these numbers, if they've declined, maybe it's just people are not reporting because they're frustrated, because they say, well, nothing's going to happen. And so I still encourage people to report it, because this information, if you report it, it gets documented. We have a better understanding of what is truly happening in our community. So again, it kind of goes with what the mayor's article was: is if you see something, say something, please, and report it.
Any other questions for the chief?
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. The 1495, the cases, some said referred to DA, the others you said also go to the DA. Was that accurate?
Yes, that's
okay.
accurate. Yeah.
So, yeah, just looking at that number, the county is currently, the DA is 1,600 cases behind, right?
Yes, thereabouts.
Okay, so they're behind by more than the total cases we generate in a year. Just keeping some perspective on that one.
Yeah.
And with the drug overdoses, I was pulling numbers from a national database, and it shows last year we had a 6.8% decrease across the nation in ODs. So seeing us go up almost double is a bit of a problem.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things related to that, and I don't know, Chief. I mean, I think that our hands are tied in a lot of instances and regulations that we're having to follow, which makes it difficult, but you're accomplishing a lot. I always hear that, what's being done, but I think this proves that our officers are out there doing a lot, so.
I would agree. I appreciate you pointing that out. I think our officers are doing an outstanding job. Our 911 dispatchers, they're working extremely hard, so I'm very proud of them. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I had one last question. So you said 16 calls per officer. So are there any KPIs based on the size of our city, and do we have enough police officers and enough resource officers for the size of city that we have and the number of calls we receive?
Well, I mean, obviously, our calls for service, we could definitely employ additional officers and put them to work. We have the numbers to support it. Do we have the budget to support that? That's the $1 million question, and that's where it becomes very difficult. So with that, we are trying to learn ways to be more efficient, and still handle the calls for service. You know, implementing programs like the Community Resource Officer is invaluable to us because that program has helped alleviate some of the burden of our patrol officers that are trying to go from one call to the next call and still give that customer service, because we are very big on customer service and making sure that somebody feels like their case is important, because it is important. And so it allows that those officers to have time to do that and still listen to that radio. But then our community resource officer and our school resource officers, they have time to spend with victims or with people that need resources with our unhoused population. And so those kind of programs are extremely valuable. The other thing that has helped us as a department was adding that additional investigator into our team. That again allows us to take some of these patrol cases and then shift them over to investigations to put kind of the final touches on them, get them prepared. So I mean, yes, I'll never deny the fact that we could use more officers, but we're trying to make it work with what we have. Yes.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think resource officers and other officers would help in many ways. But again, we're facing this budgetary crisis. I don't see our finance director here, so we'll go back to Nicole. So, where? So there she is. I'm looking over here. I'm thinking, oh my God. So anyway, just to point this out, I mean, what is our budget? 73 million. And what is our law enforcement budget? And our tax base doesn't even cover our law enforcement. We're short how many million?
We're 2 million short of covering a little over 2 million public safety, which
public
brings
safety,
in
sure.
police and fire.
Right.
So those property taxes that everybody's paying does not even cover that essential service.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And then we're budget constraints that we're looking at this last biennium. The PERS went up, what, 250,000 for us, just our city? And that doesn't count insurance. I don't know, how much did that go up this year, or percentage-wise?
I don't know percentage. I think it was close to 150-ish.
Yeah, so, you know, we had, I don't know, over $200,000 annually that's going up that we have no control over. And so eventually we have to find a way, I'm preaching to the choir probably out here, we have to find a way to offset some of these costs if we want the services we have. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
All right. All right, next item, consideration for installation of the Kayak kiosk at John Toppis Park. Jim.
Yes, thank you. Good evening.
You've been so quiet this evening.
The owners of Coastal Kayak and Stand-Up Paddle Rentals LLC approached city staff a few months ago about the possibility of putting a self-service rental kayak vending machine or kiosk at the near the recently constructed kayak launch at John Toppis Park. And that kayak launch was funded by TSOC. Staff was intrigued with the idea, and the information was presented to the Parks Commission. The Parks Commission considered it, and they recommend approval of the project per the following motion. The recommendation includes moving forward with the project as a pilot project, with the caveat that the project is reviewed quarterly and the contract has a 1-year termination clause should partnering with the kayak vendor not be in the best interest of the city. The owners did agree to provide quarterly updates to staff and the 1-year termination clause. And the owners will bear full responsibility for installation, operation, and maintenance of the facility. There is a picture of the facility in your packet there. And the Wambas, the owners, are present, and I'm sure they'd be willing to answer any questions you have.
Well, I think this is great. This is a private partnership on a situation where we have a kayak launch that they're going to be able to help facilitate individuals like myself that doesn't have a kayak and I can show up and rent one. So, but I think that's wonderful. Yeah, do you have more than one location, or is this going to be the first?
Currently, we are at 10 Mile Lake. We have one there. That's our first one. We're hoping our second one will be at John Toppet's. We are talking with Carmen right now. They're putting a floating dock over by Seven Devils, and we hope to put our third location there. So yeah, we want to get them out everywhere.
I think it's great.
Get everybody out on the water. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So, that's wonderful. And so I hope this continues on more than a year, and I hope it's successful and profitable.
I
for
do
you.
too. Yeah, yeah.
We do
The county actually gave us 2 years, so if you guys could do that, that'd be even better.
So
Well, go ahead.
I had a question. When the Parks Commission was looking at this, I see it's closer to the launch area, but I know that there was concern when we were putting in that kayak launch. There's a lot of people that fish in that area. Did they consider that in where they located this?
I think for the picture, you look at the picture.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
But there's a picture that shows actually, I think
Is there
it
plenty of
portrays it a little bit
space there?
differently.
Yeah, we actually went down there.
It's
Yeah.
right up to the water's edge.
It's actually about
Yeah,
15
it's
feet,
not-
15 feet away from the water. It's closer to the new
I think the
sidewalk that
drawing's
was
a
put
little
in.
Skewed. Let's see here.
Yeah, it would be
Yeah,
right
Looks
off
farther
of the
away in the
sidewalk.
drawing.
They have an actual picture, though. If I can find it now.
How is the operation at 10 Mile Lakes going? You've been in there a year? How many
We've been there
kayaks do you
since
have, and
June.
How's it going?
It's great, going great. We've already had a couple rentals this year. Actually, we had one right on the first. We haven't had any vandalism. It's been going really good. We've actually worked with the sheriff's department a bunch. They've used our ring camera videos for break-ins, so it's been beneficial for them as well.
Okay. And how many kayaks do you have up there?
Right now, there's 4 there.
Okay.
Yeah, but the kiosks are built to expand.
Okay.
So as we grow, we'll expand them. Yeah.
Do you have a way to track? I mean, is there?
What do you mean?
So can you tell how many people are renting them for how long?
Yeah, it's all connected to my phone. Everything is remote access. Yeah, so if
So
somebody,
you get a,
I get an alert on my phone. Yeah,
it says
so like
somebody's
it,
renting the kayak. and
yeah, exactly.
They've rented it for
You get
2 hours,
alerts
4
when they
hours.
walk by.
Yeah.
Oh,
Go-
do you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Pro-
my ring
proximity
cameras,
alert
my
or-
cameras go off, and then yeah, when people start using it, it tells me. Yeah.
And
that
when
they're using
within
it.
a certain range of the kayaks as well.
Okay.
So, which is why the sheriff's department has asked us for some information that we can give. You know, we can only provide so much because our ring cameras are only, for the kayak, I call it a kiosk, for the kiosk.
So
Thank
did Nate look at this, the city attorney, review the contract? You did? Okay.
Yes, before the Parks Commission folks were looking at it.
All right.
So forgive my ignorance, how does, I love this project, but the question is liability. So if someone rents it and something happens to them, how does that bode for the city?
So I add you guys onto my insurance, which makes you not liable. So it all goes
So you
on to me.
indemnify the city, is what I'm
Yes.
assuming?
Yeah, it's the same thing that we did with the county.
Okay.
So you guys get a certificate on my insurance.
Is there,
showing
what's the value of the indemnification?
2 million aggregate. Yeah.
I
I
actually
can do
looked
more.
at
I can
your-
do more if you need it to be more.
I actually looked at your facility or your setup kiosk at Lakeside, and they actually fill out a waiver as well.
So the waiver is red, but they agree to it on the touch screen. Yeah.
And just for your information, agreements that have a insurance liability issue, those run by Wendy as well. So we do both a legal review and kind of risk management review.
Yeah,
Wendy's our
that's
insurance
that's what we had
agent.
the county do. They ran it through their lawyers and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
And did
when we're
you,
done.
if somebody asked this already, I apologize. Did you say how it's going up in Lakeside?
Oh, it's going great. Yeah.
You're getting a lot of use?
We get a lot of use out of it. Yeah.
Excellent.
All right, any other questions?
I move to approve the installation of a kayak kiosk at John Toppet's Park adjacent to the ADA compliant kayak launch per the recommendation of the Parks Commission.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the kayak kiosk contract for John Toppet's Park. Any other comments or questions?
I just wanted to make one more.
Yes.
Oregon Coast Adventures has been a real big supporter of ours, and I actually wanted to thank Janice. She took off before I could. So she's like actually brought people here to rent from us.
Oh, great.
So I just letting you know that's been a big benefit for us.
We're doing,
Appreciate it.
We're
Yeah.
doing tours as well.
Yeah, we had
and
a travel writer from Canada come down, and we did a tour with them
Oh, great.
through Oregon Coast Adventures. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. so
Well,
it's
thank
been
you
really
for what you do.
beneficial.
Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate it.
much.
Good luck to you.
Yes. Thank you,
You
guys.
bet. Consideration of after-the-fact award of the contract emergency repair of Coos River Highway between D Street and 12th Street. This street just keeps on giving.
Yes, it does.
All right.
Okay. So on Tuesday, January 16th, staff was alerted to an issue along Coos River Highway between D Street and 12th Avenue. Upon arrival, staff observed a failed shoulder and subgrade. Staff contracted Knife River to make the temporary repairs to the area. Knife responded and temporary repairs were made on the same day. Due to the temporary nature of the repair and the expectation that the shoulder will move again, staff placed stakes in the ground on the 17th of January so the site could be monitored. When staff arrived on the 18th, they discovered that the shoulder had moved again. So we contacted Knife River, and they came out, and they just bolstered the temporary repairs. So staff reached out to a company called Geostabilization International to assess the site. GSI came on the following Sunday, and they believe that the site will fail again if it's not permanently repaired. GSI is a design and construction company that performs this type of work on a regular basis. They've actually done work for us successfully in the past. In 2016, they did another portion of the Coos River Highway, and they did West Park Road over on the west side of Mingus. So due to the emergency nature of this project, the city's procurement resolution 22-2, the public contracting rules, section 11 allows for approval of emergency contracts in excess of $100,000 due to substantial risk of loss, damage, or interruption of services. GSI has the expertise, engineering, and construction equipment to perform this work in a fraction of the time because they have the capability of doing both design and construction in-house. GSI, once under contract, can mobilize within 2 to 3 weeks. And in conclusion, staff is recommending awarding the emergency repair of Coos River Highway between D Street and 12th Avenue to GSI in accordance with the city's procurement rules for emergency contract for an amount not to exceed $407,646.25, which includes a 15% contingency. So something to note is that this project's one of council goals for 2023 to 2025, specifically Goal 3, maintain and improve public infrastructure, Item G, which calls out Coos River Highway through the S-curves and east side. While this project doesn't meet the entire goal, it does address a portion. So talking about budget implications. So in the year 2000, the city and Oregon Department of Transportation, ODOT, entered into what we're calling a jurisdictional exchange streets agreement. So what that was is ODOT gave us 23 lane miles, and in return, they also gave us $4.8 million for that exchange. This Coos River Highway is part of that 23 lane miles. The city then passed a charter that stated that they're going to restrict that $4.8 million, but any interest gained off the $4.8 million could be used towards maintenance and repair and reconstruction. So to date, the cash on hand, the interest in that fund is just under $460,000. This budget year, FYE 2024, staff budgeted $190,000. That's not going to cover the cost. So should council approve this award, then we'll have to come back at a later date and do a supplemental budget.
Okay. Questions for Jennifer?
Just curious how much in repairs we've had to do on those 23 point whatever jurisdictional miles that we got only 4.8 million for.
That would take a little research, but we can do that and get back to you on that.
I bet we spent more.
I think our previous city manager reminded us of that as well, many a time.
Nicole, did you want to comment?
I guess I don't really have anything of depth to add to that, but I have, in the short period of time I've worn this hat, poked a few people at the state in regards to just that extra ad they've done to communities where they did those exchanges without a really awareness of the actual costs of those roads. So, not to any end result, but just awareness.
So, and I asked earlier, and I got this answer, but I think everyone should realize, this Coos River Highway, we've done multiple fixes. This is not the same stretch that we've done.
Correct.
Okay. And so we use the same company to do another piece that it's held up for quite a while, I guess, right?
Since 2016, we haven't had a
Right.
problem with the stretch
So,
that
yeah.
they fixed, and then this fix will fix an additional 150 feet.
All right, council, how would you like to proceed?
I'll move to award the contract for the emergency repair of the Coos River Highway between D Street and 12th Avenue to Geostabilization International for an amount not to exceed $407,646.25, which includes a 15% contingency.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the emergency repair for Coos River Highway. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? So then you have to come back for a supplemental budget, is that what I understand?
Yes, however, we are working on, with the audit finished up, we usually do some cleanup of carryovers, so we bring them to actual, and we are working on that, so it's
Okay.
likely we'll just incorporate that at the same time.
All right, thank you. Now you're up, Nicole. Consideration of a rainy day fund for the Mingus Park Pool boiler replacement.
Thank you. So, as many probably already are aware, we are without an operating pool at the moment because the boiler is out. We have done a little bit of research and have some options. However, our challenge has been the funding of that. Though there is some interest for some community support, it's not reaching to the levels necessary to move forward on a replacement. Looking in that $150,000 range is pretty significant. So because we have interest to get that pool online sooner than later, what we are asking you to do tonight is to consider use of our rainy day funds. Our rainy day fund is a fund that's established from the general fund. There was a resolution passed historically that said the carryover balance for the general fund, 2.5% of that annually should be sent over to that rainy day reserve fund. And, it's intended to help us cover emergencies and unexpected kinds of things. It by no means, at $1.2 million, is significant to really assist with some major things. So we really should be mindful about how we're spending that with goals towards returning those dollars if at all possible. So because of the nature of this and the impact to the community, we do believe that it is beneficial to look to those dollars in this instance. We will, however, still continue to find resources to replenish those dollars. What this does require is for you to pass a resolution for us to access those dollars. If that is something you're interested in doing, we're asking that resolution, because we will have to go out for bids, we want to say, give that cap of what we believe that cost will be, though we don't have those bids yet. So when we go out to bid and we identify the person we would award to, we would come back to you at that point.
So I got a call from Kathy McNutt, who's the manager for the Mingus Park Pool, and she is anxious to go out and try to get this repaired so we can get going. They're also looking for grants. They've indicated, and I hope we follow up on it, that they're willing to pay half this cost, and then with the intent that they get grants and maybe they can get that reimbursed back to them. So that would be the intent behind all this. Captain Schaefer, I didn't see him. Wasn't he at the meeting, right?
It's my understanding they called a special meeting tonight to discuss that.
So I'm glad that Mingus Park wants to participate with us on it, so that's great. And being mindful of this rainy day fund, you were looking specifically at me because I'm always looking at getting to that fund. So I'll be mindful. Anyway, council, questions for Nicole or anything, one on this?
When you say they, who's they that's going to pay
The
for it?
Mingus Park Pool group? What is?
It's actually Mingus Park Pool Management, so much like some of our other facilities, we own the facility, but we have a organization who operates.
So they're like a nonprofit, do they have a bank account? And
They do, and I believe Kathy's acknowledged they do have some dollars to help
Yes.
support.
do they have depreciation funds for these sorts of things?
It's,
I mean, that's always been my concern with pools, that they're a great idea, but nobody ever thinks about the year-to-year maintenance and replacement of this stuff.
You're right, but I don't think they do.
They don't.
No.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Nor do we.
personally, I don't mind helping. I think the pool is important. We need to do that. But I also think that it would be important to try to establish depreciation funds so that when these things break, which they do, we have money to repair them.
I agree. But it's hard to get going. I totally understand. Truthfully, that's the way to be, but.
Sorry.
So if
No.
if they were to receive a significant, let's say $150,000 in grants, would that replenish this fund?
That's my understanding in the conversation. I'm sure
Yes.
the mayor can speak to that, but it would be to replenish those funds first, whatever we had to use to get going, and then replenish their funds.
Yeah, my conversation, I was explicit that if they got grants, our rainy day fund would be replaced first. I think it's
Thank you.
important because, as Nicole mentioned, this is a fund that we want to make sure that we take care of. So that being the case, council, how would you like to proceed?
Move we adopt resolution 2403 authorizing the expenditure of funds from the rainy day fund for the purchase of a boiler for Mingus Park Pool in amount not to exceed $150,000.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second to adopt resolution 2403. Any other comments? Long night.
Yes. Commissioner Cribbins has a comment.
Yes.
Kind of. It's more of a question. So
Sure.
correct me if I'm wrong. If we do this, could we attach a subline that says, yes, we'll do this, but we want you to establish a depreciation fund? Am I asking too much? Probably.
Probably. I mean, I think we can ask whether they can accomplish it. And I think that, unfortunately, Captain Schaefer's not here. Maybe talking to Kathy and finding out. I mean, they really operate on a shoestring.
100% get it.
Yeah, so I don't know where they're going to get the funds. I know they're always going out for grants to help facilitate this because even, just their operating costs are
Right.
that. So,
my concern for getting the pool back up sort of outweighs
Right.
my hesitation or reservations about that, because I realize it's hard to find that money.
No, I think you're on the right. I mean, it makes sense, but having it happen is problematic or might be difficult. But I think something we should try. So,
thank you.
I think we just need to open that conversation again.
Mhm.
But I mean, they've pledged that they're looking for money to pay that back.
Right.
At this point.
Right.
I think we just need to get it done.
do we know what kind of time period we're looking at for all this? Because I know the pool's closed right now.
Yeah, I think we have a general rough.
So we're going to be advertising for grants advertising for quotes next week, and then close that advertisement March 5th and get into contract, and then we have to deal with lead times. So, but March 5th is when we're going to close the request for quotes.
So we're looking at a couple of months, probably.
Most likely.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Consideration to repair the current sidewalk maintenance policy. Jim?
Sure, thank you. This was addressed I brought it up to you at your last meeting, the work session. The city charter and Coos Bay Municipal Code 12.10 assign responsibility for sidewalk maintenance and repair to the adjacent property owners. And to further focus what the city of Coos Bay does for its sidewalks, we adopted a sidewalk maintenance policy back in 2014. The policy is a good document, but it's requires us to do more than our available resources can realistically meet. The city was recently sued for an injury to a person due to tripping on the city sidewalk adjacent to the city-owned parking lot. And our insurance company has suggested that the plaintiff would not have been awarded a settlement if we did not have this maintenance policy, and they recommend that it be repealed.
So I think everyone remembers this came up at a work session, and it was our insurance company that recommended that we do away with a maintenance policy and repeal it, and so that's what's being suggested. Comments to Jim or anyone about this?
I'll move to repeal the city's adopted sidewalk maintenance policy dated February 18th, 2014.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to repeal the city's adopted sidewalk maintenance policy. Is there any other questions? I just want to go ahead.
I was just going to say, just a comment, this doesn't reduce what we're trying to do to maintain our sidewalks. This is just a technicality that.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was going to mention, so. No, you beat me to it, that's good. All right, any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes. All right, let's see, discuss and provide direction regarding street improvement requirements for infill development. This is going to be short and sweet, right, Nicole?
I'm going to attempt to make
right.
it short and sweet.
Okay.
But
I'm sorry.
I do think it's an important conversation to have. So we have had a situation be presented to us in an area of the city where there is kind of some infill development that's happening over time. We have a couple of standards that we work under. One that is in fire, building code, and then one is within our street standards, our transportation plan within our comp plan. Those don't exactly intertwine nicely, and they leave some room for interpretation. Because of that, we have some challenges today, and also I believe as we look towards the future, when we do expect to potentially have some urban growth boundary changes and a lot more infill. So the scenario is we have had an interpretation when there is one home being developed on a road, that one home developer does not have responsibility for putting in the streets. And I'm going to try to speak to this, and it likely will have to go to the experts, but that one home developer is not held to the standards that we would hold a 3 or more home developer. So those streets are not being built out. Because there are those two different bodies, we are working on some coordination, and I'll acknowledge that the separation of departments might have caused a failed coordination amongst departments. So we had 2 different developers, single home, get 2 different answers, which has brought this up to the surface. And where I've landed with this, as someone who's new in this role, I want to have a feel for this council, what their hopes and dreams are for street build out in our city, what those streets should look like. Should we be considering gravel as an option? Should we be considering full storm drain, sidewalks, curbs, all of those? Do we do that at a single developer? Do we do that? Does it trigger with multiple homes on a? I just want to be very thoughtful about that, and I want to hopefully remove any amount of interpretation that we might have, that we have a good idea of what your expectations are. So that being said, if you have questions, of course, if there's any thing that we can kind of add to that, I'm interested in hearing.
So when I was saying this is going to be short and sweet, I was just being facetious, because I think this council is going to have many different suggestions on how we want to go about this. And so, I mean, Nicole's kind of laid it out. I mean, do we want gravel streets at all? And if we do, in this case, it would be one part of our city, but not the other parts of the city. We don't allow that because it's not in that situation. Or do we want to have it paved? And then we got to make sure if it's going to be paved, do we want it paved to the standard that it's going to be an actual street? And then, of course, if you do stormwater, which we probably should think of if you're going to pave it, I don't know, we can ask. But then on top of it, when you start adding sidewalks, then the expense starts escalating up. So is there a balance? Or where does this council want to lie? I'll just lay it out there, and so staff has the direction and idea of where to go.
Mayor Benetti, when you say one part of the city versus the other part of the city, do you mean that the standards in Empire are different.
I think some parts are built out differently, so they're going to continue on as street, sidewalks, and gutters. If some parts haven't been developed enough, wherever that may be, I think we might have in Englewood as well as Empire or anywhere else.
Okay.
And if you continue to do that not being built out, in this case, you have, I think it's Seagate. So one part of Seagate's all sidewalk and gutter and stormwater, and then one part of it's gravel. So what do we do with it in between is where we're at.
Yeah, thank you. I just
Yeah.
wanted to.
So I would just start out by saying, what would Phil say? Because I remember that we had a very lengthy conversation about this, and, you know, we have new counselors since then, but I thought the whole point of implementing this policy was to get away from gravel, because gravel has its own problems. It makes sense, you know, when we see it, but to try and take it to that next level standard where we're not, gravel travels. Yeah, that worked well. Gravel travels.
So to be
And ruins asphalt.
To play a devil's advocate here, so by doing this, we're going to start restricting housing development.
Yeah, that's the other challenge, is finding
So-
that balance for infill when we're in a situation where we need more homes.
But I appreciate Councillor Kilmer's reminder of Councillor or Phil's comment of gravel just isn't the way to go. And from my perspective, I think we need to be consistent. And I think we would be doing a disservice to the future of this community when we are no longer on this council if we have a hodgepodge of some roads are gravel and some roads have sidewalks and some roads have storm drains. So I think while it might stop us from some development, need to have a consistent practice in place.
I recall a past city manager saying something like, we have 88 gravel roads in the city currently.
Yeah, I think we're around 90 miles. Is that what we're thinking?
That could be what I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah, I think
Which
it's
is pretty significant. I personally live on one. It sucks. It causes all sorts of problems, and I'm very much in the city. And I think that if we're looking at new development and putting investment there, we probably also need to think about the other 90 miles of road that currently
Yep.
are not paved.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
And that was
Yep.
one of the comments that former counselor.
He may have
Marlin-
lived on that same road.
He did. He did.
Well, it was the same comment, you know, new development, a standard, but then work on getting the roads that are gravel paved at the same time with maybe, you know, some of the all that extra money we have.
The other thing I would kind of add to this conversation, we have a limited, but still yet a mechanism to handle paved road issues through the transportation utility fee. We don't have that same mechanism for our gravel roads. So if we want to contemplate having or allowing gravel road development in new infill, we're going to have to contemplate how we're going to do that. And do you want to designate some of those tough dollars to gravel roads? So, yeah, it's a tough thing. I just want us to get to a place where we are meeting your expectations, and we've all heard that, and we now know how to move forward with less interpretation.
So do we all agree? My only thing is, and I'd like to have staff come back with an estimate of whatever it is. I still think sidewalks should be something to consider or not, because that's going to add to the cost considerably. I still believe there should be pavement. I still think there should be stormwater and gutters. But when you start adding sidewalks, you know, can we do sidewalk on one side of the street, maybe not on both? I mean, we talked about this kind of development at Red Moon, or where it was, not doing, I mean, to meet certain standards, because the development on that, to put sidewalks on both sides, which can be very expensive, but if you eliminate it to be one, you know, so I think maybe we should get some philosophy or some suggestions on that. That's my opinion.
I don't like your opinion, Mr. Mayor. I don't like your opinion.
I know.
Because
But I'd like to know what the cost is.
That's
all I
fine.
say.
Costs are great. I just think that if we're talking about livability, which seems to be a word that is being used a lot these days, yes, I recognize it's more expensive and that should be on the developer. And quite honestly, we should have sidewalks.
Maybe we should just have the livability committee think about it.
I'd be interested in having a longer work session about this with some property developers invited at a future date.
That's a great idea.
I know, but I still, yeah, I agree, and that's fine, but I still think we need some, I mean, I don't know what the cost would be. I mean, I think Jennifer could give us some ideas if we're gonna pave a mile with a road, and if they're gonna have sidewalks and whatever, what the cost differential would be, just an idea. But anyway, there you
Can I
go.
just get clarity? Is this a cost that developers would incur?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And that's what's happening with these two homes. So right now, we have two homes that are in flux with a decision. Am I correct?
Yes, I
So-
mean, we could certainly make a decision, which is what we've been doing in the past. We just have some internal inconsistency in
Right.
it understanding.
Correct.
Because it's based on interpretation.
Right.
So,
So we do, I think the majority of the council from here definitely wants this paved. And then, am I right? He's not, he's thinking. Okay, Troy, question or comment?
I'm working with a 56K processor. It takes a while, I think, to spin around. I suppose I think if we think about this theoretically, how do we see ourselves as a city and a community? Are we dirt roads and gravel roads?
No,
Do we
you're
want
right.
to see us as an economic, strong beacon of rural communities? I do. I mean, I feel that optimistically. I realize it's very expensive. And I don't know how we gradiate that. If I'm a developer and I'm doing 181 houses, I get it. I'm responsible, put it in the streets and the sidewalks and all that. If I'm John Q. Public and wants to build a house, no, I can't afford to pave that whole block and the sidewalks and everything else. But there's got to be some way we can gradiate that through. Because if we believe that we are a beautiful, viable, economic strong city, then we need to act like that. And we need to make future plans to look like that. Which means when we do new development, we put in pavements and sidewalks and gutter and sewer, and we work on establishing those standards for areas that are already developed and are gravel. I get that it's expensive. And there's got to be a way that maybe we can figure out how to gradiate that. Like maybe we put the house in with gravel, and then if there's three houses, then everybody has to pitch in and do that. I'm just trying to
yeah,
think on my
that's
feet if there's a
absolutely
way we
fair.
can spread those
You just have
costs.
to have a mechanism to collect that.
Right.
And in the meantime, instead of having two people answering that question, if it has to do with streets, we send it to one person. And then they get a consistent answer every time.
I.e., the information we're disseminating should be consistent. Yeah. Which is what you're trying to get to.
Yes.
So did you get a clear answer on this?
Clear as mud. It would sound as if we're coming back at a future date to have maybe a little bit more lengthy discussion, but I do have a good feeling that you guys intentionally would like us to be looking towards paved streets as our goal.
As making us a beautiful city.
As the largest city on
Yeah.
the Oregon coast.
Paved streets with sidewalks.
With sidewalks.
Okay, I'm not going to say anything else at this time.
I just want to commend Commissioner Crivens. Thank you. I was incredibly inspired, and I hope that you will lead the conversation when it comes back to this council.
All right, so I'm sure that this conversation will continue on in some fashion. Thank you, everybody. Discussion on update on potential purchase of 225 West Lockhart Avenue. Nicole, you're on.
Thank you.
Thanks for waiting.
It has been a bit. So this is kind of just a general update. Some of these conversations have happened in executive session because they relate to real property transactions, and we are allowed to handle those in executive session because it benefits the taxpayers whose dollars we will be spending, and we want to have some negotiation power still. But I think it's important, because there is some conversations happening out in the public, that we start having some conversations around this particular property. So we started last June, actually, when the state came out with some potential funding sources to address shortages in regards to shelters and rehousing opportunities in communities. We put forth a few projects here locally that we wanted to request funding. I think our funding request was a little under $7 million, working with our community partners in those projects. We identified very specifically this property on Lockhart as a potential location for relocating the Devereaux Center. This location is important because it is adjacent to Coalbank Village, so it makes very good sense to locate those two facilities next door to each other. The estimate for acquiring and rehabilitating that property was $3.2 million. That was included in that $7 million ask. The state awarded us 1.9 out of that $7 million. So we had to scale back, think about how we were going to use that while also meeting those metrics. And those metrics are rehousing 32 individuals and creating 8 new shelters. So for 1.9, in order to meet those metrics, we now had 1.5 available to put towards this relocation project, which we knew to be an estimate of $3.2 million. So in July, we did communicate with that property owner. We entered into an agreement to hold that property as we tried to, we thought we were going to get funding, within weeks. If we all remembered, very confidently, I thought, okay, by the end of August, we were going to be funded and purchased. And it happened not until late October did we have an agreement with the state of Oregon. And again, that same group of entities are doing the second funding bucket, Coos Bay, North Bend, and the county. So it's taken a long time. We were able to at least hold that property. That agreement holds it until April 20th. And then at that point, we'd have to figure out something else. The original asking price for that property was $1,995,000. That is what we entered in that agreement for. I've been communicating through our real estate agent of record, attempting to find a different place to land on that because we knew we only had $1.5 million. We last night had the opportunity to meet with the Devereaux Center's Board of Directors and just share where we are at with this project, because we do believe that relocating the center in a space that gives them an opportunity to very purposefully rehabilitate for the services that they are providing today, instead of being in a location that's based on services that were happening and needed at the time they opened their doors. It's two different kind of bodies of work that are happening. I think it will be impactful for that work. It will change the trajectory of some of these folks who they're trying to help. They were willing, through discussions at that meeting last night, the board was willing. There's always been some talk once they moved to sell that facility, those dollars being pushed back into their operations. But the board was willing to help us partner on this and help us fill that gap. We have still continued to negotiate with the property owner, and today was able to negotiate down that price to 1.75. So the Devereaux Center is willing to pledge their property for that, and I am awaiting that approval from the property owner. I'm hopeful, as that was an offer at once on the table, that he would carry the contract for us. So that is where we're at. That's just to keep everybody up on the same page. That puts everybody in the public also in awareness of the efforts that we've been working at for several months, and in partnership with the Devereaux Center as we look to see how this model moves forward. So I'm taking any questions or.
But we have a contract for a firm price of 1.7,250,000, correct?
1,750,000.
50,000.
I have a,
Okay.
we have a firm
So we have a firm
commitment.
offer of that. So instead of being 2 million, because I'm going to round it up, that's what he was, he's come down to that. And we know that we can, and the Devereaux Center has agreed to pledge their building to help us offset that cost.
Yes.
Okay.
So we know
And so
we're 1.5 of the grant dollars.
Right.
And then, yes.
Okay. Great. I think this is great news, and I appreciate the Devereaux Center stepping up and pledging their building to, last night, we thought it might be more, and so they're willing to pledge the total amount to get to that 2 million if it was necessary. Thank goodness it wasn't, and we were able to find a better ground of that. So, good job. Thank you for everyone and working together on this, so.
And we
Any
do
questions,
have some
anyone?
folks from the Devereaux Center.
I think it's a good deal. I don't know what the numbers are for fair market value in that area.
1.6.
But
Yeah, we did have an
1.6?
appraisal done,
Okay.
which
And
was.
assessed value was 1.5?
No.
What's assessed
No,
value?
I don't know assessed.
I don't know what the assessed is, but the appraised value was 1.6, but we got 1.5 in a grant, 1.5 million.
Okay. I guess my point was, between the assessed value and the fair market value, if it was 1.5, 1.6 to 1.75, that's within, I think, a reasonable markup, and it's still a good price. It's less than, 14% change, so, good job. That's my long way of saying short.
Was not me at all. It was a group of people who were working to figure out how to solution this, so.
We should move forward as quickly as we can.
Well, you got it, I mean, we got the firm offer, for firm price.
With an accepted offer.
Yeah, accepted offer,
Yeah.
correct.
So we do have some, some next steps, because government, we love hoops. We'll still have to present to the pilot board. We need approval by those 3 entities. And for the second amount of money, the first round under the House Bill 4123 is fiscal agent is the county. This second amount under the executive order, North Bend took fiscal agent responsibility. So just like you, anytime you're going to spend an amount over whatever staff's authority is, that comes before you. They will need to hear this. So we will bring to North Bend the pilot's recommendation to support that. So we're probably a couple weeks before we're going to be finalizing on this.
Well, we got Andrew here. So Andrew, let me ask you, I think last night you were at the meeting also, and you said they could have an emergency meeting, am I correct, to move this forward a little bit quicker?
I don't want to go sideways, but at home, that's anything over $100, I have to ask for approval.
That's fair.
So yes, Mayor Benetti. We're going to be in contact with Nicole. She's our chair, and the vice chair is David Milliron. And we're going to see if we can get this meeting forward as soon as possible.
So if it's expedited and things work out well, we could have this before the City Council of North Bend and their consideration next week, right?
We can certainly make that as our goal.
It'd be nice.
Yes, sir.
All right. I
I'm
appreciate
curious if there are conversations and opportunities for us in this new agreement to create some livability standards for how the Devereaux operates in this new community, because we know there has been challenges in Empire, and while the team there may be doing everything they can, I am concerned about the impact in a new neighborhood and wanting to make sure we're putting stipulations in place around being good neighbors, potentially some fencing, even potentially a rebrand to help with the community perception.
They are way ahead of you. That was a big portion of their discussion last night at their meeting. In fact, they mentioned rebrand, data, releasing information about the impact that they are having on that if we didn't have that, that facility providing these services, what that would mean for our community. And then helping us to communicate and having better communication between the city and the Devereaux Center board and Devereaux Center staff. I mean, they're very much recognizing that there are issues and looking forward farther into the future.
I think that's exciting to hear, and I think to Councillor Stevens' point, I mean, I think we have brought those up, and I think that is the expectation, that when we do get to that place, right now it's about the property, right? But when we do get to that place, working collaboratively to make sure that it's beneficial for all, I think will be incredibly important.
No, and I can tell you, I was at the meeting last night, and it was great to have this interaction and discussion. A lot of this came up. They admit that the location they have is not the best location. It's not facilitating the needs that they have, and so this new location is a new start for them and a way to accommodate things that they're not able to do now. So I think that's collaboration that Sarah mentioned and Stephanie brought up, I think is something that we need to continue. That's one of our goals, is collaborate with our partners, and this is definitely a partner that we have that we need to collaborate with and see how we can help. So, yeah, absolutely.
And that's kind of that last piece and likely the most important piece. And I would acknowledge that by them committing their building, let's contemplate that they have an asset and they will no longer have an asset when they move to this new building, because that will be a city-owned building. And so that's a big give on their part to make sure that they're finding a new space that works better and fits better in our community. But we did talk also last night about part of this is going to be a written agreement about how we make this successful. And I think all parties agree that that's the best way to approach this, so.
I'm thinking we probably already did it, but did we talk to CIS about the liability implications of owning the building the Devereaux Center is operating in?
We just cannot be operators of the facility. Yeah, and they will have to carry insurance and, yeah.
So, Nicole, the thing you didn't touch about is that this was going to be a $3 million renovation, 1.5 renovation, 1.5 purchase. So where's the other 1.5 coming from?
So I've had a few months to work through this. We already work with CDBG grant funds, have that help administering that with NeighborWorks Umpqua. So we've had some discussions with that CDBG team, Business Oregon. This fits in their model for funding. You can get a max of 1.5. We have to be the owner of the building to apply for that, so it's kind of contingent on closing that deal. I've already talked to CCD because NeighborWorks Umpqua's kind of at capacity at this point with us. CCD is willing to apply, manage, administer, report on CDBG, which is a big lift because it's federal funding. So that part will be handled. It's likely we'll look at some staged work. I mean, we've talked about it internally, like what does it take to get the move started, what needs to be done immediately, those kinds of things. Those are still things we've got to iron out, but yeah, we do have some funding kind of identified for the rehabilitation.
Right, which is very important. Besides just having the building, the rehabilitation of it and making sure it's something that they can occupy and move into and take care of. All right, good news? Yes.
May I have a couple of things I'd like to add?
Sure.
Get my voice back and now some basketball, so
great.
It's getting better. The first thing I want to add is we do have 2 current board members here from the Devereaux Center here today, and one is Scott Cooper, and another one is he's been here in the area for a long time, a retired physician. I'm sorry for your name again. Martin. And so they are here today, so I know we're probably short on time, but if you have questions, they're here. Secondly, I attended the full meeting with my project manager yesterday, and we agreed with the board that we are going to collaborate and be at the board meetings, at least one of us to represent each month. So if you have questions or reports, it's going to be a collaboration here. So I just want you all to know that.
No, that's great. Good news. All right. Anything more on this? I think you're going to be under public comments, but anything more on this? No? Well, let me first go by the list first. So public comments is where we're at. And we have a Richard.
It has nothing to do with this, but
Okay.
I want to address the city. Go ahead. I got a problem.
Richard, 3 minutes, okay? And
Okay,
give us your name,
I got
please.
a problem, and I've been running around the whole state trying to fix it. Your courthouse here, I've been here my whole life. threw me in jail and 3-7-0'd me. If you don't know what that means I didn't understand the court system. In my bag out there, I can bring you in this much of a record. And there's 6 motions, 2 habeas corpuses, a written mandamus, and the court still granted them the saying I didn't understand and let him inject me. That was total crap. And I've been asking everybody in this whole state to help me fix this. And since this was I've been here my whole life and this is your county, I figure you guys should help me. So I'm asking you guys, do you have anything to say? Because I can prove all of it.
Is that your comment?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
That's it?
That's it. Go ahead, I'll address you. First of all, this is the city, not the county, and we have nothing to do with the courts, and so. No. So the thing is, we oversee the city, not the county. I feel for you. I think it's obviously a problem that you're having, but we have no oversight whatsoever of your issue. So, well, no, I don't, and I'm sorry, I don't know where to direct you, and I apologize that we can't direct you. Okay. Right, I understand. Okay. Okay, no. All right, next comment. Any more public comments? Andrew, did you have one?
I can introduce the guy that will be speaking on behalf of the pilot program. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Good evening. I'd like to recognize Major David Kaufman. He would love to be here in person, but he wasn't able to. Major Kaufman is part of our faith-based committee meetings that we have each month, and he had some questions with the pastors, so I'll turn it over to Major Kaufman.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you for being so patient.
Oh, my privilege, and thank you for this forum so that I could still present my public comment. I appreciate hearing about the Devereaux Center. I want to share with you we have a great partnership with them. The Salvation Army and Devereaux Center opened the Warming Center. We've had some really great success with people there. I would like to share with you that we also appreciate that the city of Coos Bay, your policy is to allow us to open at 36 degrees, and it's the lowest temperature in Oregon, by the way. So congratulations for that. There's some challenges I see to that as well. For instance, this past week, there was a really strong windstorm, and it was combined with rain. And we go by the weather.gov, which is run by the National OSHA. I don't even know how to pronounce all the names for that acronym. But anyway, NOAA is the condensed version. We go by their website, and they announced a severe weather warning. I just want to bring it to your attention that the Salvation Army and Devereaux Center have the Warming Center available for people who are experiencing our homeless and unhoused neighbors, in particular, who are experiencing the severity of that weather. And I would just like to share with you some of the things we hear when the Warming Center isn't open is that some of our unhoused neighbors, they seek, anything they could do to break that wind. They seek comfort under the awnings at businesses and private property. And, I just want to lay it at the city council's feet that we're available. So thank you so much for the privilege of operating the Warming Center. We consider it a privilege to take care of our neighbors. So I just wanted to lay that at your feet. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Any other public comments? All right, so Nicole, you want to address the Warming Center a little bit? I also see that the chief's here, Mark, also is involved in this, and I think our chief of police. But, go ahead.
So I'll start us, but I am by no means the person who probably should carry this conversation because the Warming Center policy has been in play prior to my kind of being involved in something, so I'm not sure how it initially started. But I do understand that initially we were only looking at that services as available at the Devereaux Center's current location, which is not established for that kind of activity in a very safe and orderly manner. So now we have another facility who's very purposefully planned for a warming center and does have that capacity, but we have one policy that is intended to cover all locations that could be established as a warming center. I think as the major represented, that 36 degrees is significant across the state of Oregon. We are doing much better than most communities are. Are we doing all we could do? Likely not, but we are doing what we believe is safe for the centers that are operating in our community. And then I'd ask Mark to add some true depth to that.
Quick memory check first, though. Steffi and I co-chaired that work group. If I remember right, in the ordinance, we listed inclement weather, but we didn't say it had to be NOAA standard so that providers could be flexible to our unpredictable weather.
Yes.
I can cover that. So backing up a little bit with some history, before the Devereaux Center, we operated, or we allowed the operation of a warming center out of the green spot, which was the old JCPenney building, if you remember. At that time, that was probably 2010 on to 2016-ish. And at that time, the threshold was 32 degrees. The earliest documentation I have with the Devereaux Center was 2016, where we moved that threshold to 34 degrees. And then between 2016 and 2019, we had some discussions about whether that included wind chill factor, primarily because of our wet environment and typically very windy, wet environment. And so that prompted a study that we completed in 2019. We looked at 11 known warming centers in Western Oregon. Of those, I don't have the current standards, but I know that at that time, in 2019, only Lincoln City has a warmer threshold than we do. That's at 40 degrees. Astoria is the same as us, and then everyone else is either 32 or 33 degree threshold. Based on that, we brought to City Council the policy, and the City Council approved in 2019 the current policy, which says 36 degrees or extreme weather. And so then in 2020, so the next year we had to define what extreme weather meant, and essentially what we did is adopted the National Weather Service's definition of either a warning, a watch, or an advisory. So a winter storm advisory or winter storm warning or watch. All three have different definitions as far as a warning means it's imminent, going to happen. A watch means that it's likely, and an advisory is kind of like a warning, or kind of like a watch, but a little bit less severe than a watch. Anyway, the storm that David mentioned probably would have qualified as one of those three categories. And so it would have been, even though the temperature threshold didn't drop below 36 degrees, probably would have justified opening the warming center. Something else to consider, rather than moving that dial or continuing to move that dial, is that the Oregon Fire Code only allows us to operate a temporary facility. So something that the building was not designed or approved for, it's not approved as a residence. It's a temporary use, only allows 90 days in a one-year period. So if we moved it to 40 degrees, the chances are we would be pushing that 90 days. There's an awful lot of days that meet that. So that's a concern. The other concern is that we open ourselves up for an increased amount of risk. We're utilizing a facility that's not designed or built or intended for that type of use, although we recognize that it does value, or there's a value to the community and a value to the people that are utilizing it. It does save lives, and so it's worth the risk to some degree, but that's kind of where we've landed. And I guess one last parting comment, or not parting, but one last thing I want to point out is that there are other resources in the county or in the city. For example, the mission is, I checked today, they're at about 70% capacity. They have about 45 people in residence right now, and they can house more than that. So, and they also wanted to point out that they served 2,500 to 3,000 meals just in January. So they're providing that service as well. So.
Thank you. Sure. Well, thanks, Mark. So the question is, first of all, the council can decide if we want to address the change in this. My only concern is that I think Mark hit upon it, the chief, excuse me, that we don't have a facility that can really accommodate this for long term. Maybe down the road, at another time, we will have a facility to help with that. But at this time, I just don't think we do. And I think if we want to go down that road, then we need to make sure we have a facility that can accommodate it. And at this time, unless I'm wrong, we don't. So does the council want to revisit this at another time or leave it where it's at?
Seems like something that could roll over to the livability group.
Okay, so we can do that. We can roll everything over there. Sorry. But anyway, that being the case. Okay, so I have been reminded by both these individuals that we have a time frame. So we're going to get to... Okay, so 9 o'clock, I'll be more specific. Our meetings are supposed to end at 9 o'clock unless we suspend the council rules. All right, am I specific enough? All right, okay, thank you. Anyway, so I'm going to ask the council, do you want to suspend the council rules or not? I mean, we can start skipping council comments tonight if you want, and we're done with that, and go, because we have an urban renewal event that has to be taken care of.
And I think we've had the business owner from the urban renewal
Well, that's what
here
the
since.
renewal meeting would have to happen.
No, I get that. My point is I want to make sure that we do that at least.
Yes, absolutely. So again, we're going to run out of time. Do you want to suspend the rules or skip council comments? How would you like to proceed?
I'd like to skip council comments. I remember a past city councilor saying no good decisions can be made after 9 o'clock, and I think we need to live by that.
Say that again now? Who was this?
She's now does RDI. What's her name? Jennifer,
Okay.
thank you.
I know, but we can suspend it if we want. Okay, so we're going to skip council. Does everyone agree with skipping council comments? Nicole, you have anything that's urgent?
I do not, and I'll be happy to share what I was going to share in an email to you guys tomorrow.
Okay. So the only thing is that we have an executive session that we can skip, I guess, and bring it up at the next meeting. All right?
I actually had a council comment, and it was quick.
So you can make them in your urban renewal agenda if you have time. All right, so I'm going to adjourn the city council meeting, and we're going to convene the renewal agency meeting.
And we have to take a very slight, short break, or?
You can just keep going.
Okay, we're
Keep
just
rolling.
we're just gonna keep rolling, so I'm gonna call the Coos Bay Urban Renewal Agency meeting to order, and first item on the agenda is public comments. No public comments, so we will go to action item number 2, which is the consideration, oh wait, Jonathan Arnold. Are you still here?
He is not.
Okay. He had signed up for public comment, so I figured since he didn't make noise that perhaps he wasn't still here. Okay, so action item number 2 is consideration to approve the improvement grant request for 536 South 2nd Street, and Nicole is going to take
I
that.
will be happy to start that out. So I do understand that the property owner is here with us tonight, but essentially the property owner of 536 South 2nd Street has submitted an application for an improvement program grant for a project that includes fencing the parking lot to provide security and allow for leaving the overflow inventory on the lot during the dry summer months. Just as a quick reminder, this improvement program provides for a 50-50 grant, so it's a matching kind of thing, which the guidelines suggest up to a $25,000 award per fiscal year. It does require or request that there be 3 written bids for the project. In this instance, the applicant was able to acquire 2 bids for the project. In the past, we've allowed that. The design assistance team and staff have reviewed the request and have no objection. The total cost of the project was at the lowest bid is $25,000 to $45,224. So before you, the request at that 50/50 grant award comes to $12,622.62. And again, the owner is here if you guys did have some questions specifically about the project.
And I wanted to give you the opportunity, since you sat through this whole meeting, if you have anything that you'd like to provide to the agency.
Al?
Al?
Yeah.
Did you? Just if you could come up to the podium, because we do have people online. Thank you.
This is your moment, Al.
Yeah.
Well, this kind of started with Roger a couple of years ago. Roger stopped by the shop. At that time, he caught me probably at a bad time, but I told him I was going to fence my parking lot with chain link fence and rolls of barbed wire on the top. He implored me to apply for urban renewal money and put up probably less effective, but certainly more expensive wrought iron fencing. So that's what I'm doing. I know a lot of folks are putting up fencing around the area, and I think the situation downtown got a lot better when everybody shut down their can recycling facilities, but it could get worse. So I think probably now is a good time to lock things up a little bit more.
Okay. A question, do we traditionally use urban renewal dollars for fencing? Okay, thank you.
But I'm going to beat this drum again. We do 50% here, but we've talked about 75, and we've done 75 in the past, so I'm going to advocate that we do 75% here. I'm going to keep beating it until we change it, but that's how I feel. So there we go. That's my take, 2 cents.
I put this bid together in December, and I haven't been back online to look at the materials costs, but they drop off any of the bids every 30 days because prices just keep going up and up and up. So I assume that this price has probably increased some, which I'll incur, but I think that's something else to consider, that, you know, every month things just keep going up and up.
I'll move to approve the improvement grant request at 75% of the eligible expenses, subject to submittal of any required permits, structural, electrical, and floodplain.
Second. Second. Yeah, go. All right.
Thank you.
You bet. Well, we got to vote on it.
We don't have a motion.
Do you have any discussion?
I would just like the property owner to be the poster boy after this is approved, of advocating of how wonderful this fencing will be for his business. While it's not chain link and barbed wire, this is a much more appealing solution and probably will be more inviting for future people wanting to purchase items at his property.
Yes, exactly.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the table here to fund the grant for 75% of eligible expenses. And a second, all
We had
those, huh?
Sorry, go ahead.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
And we did it by 9. You still got time for your comments?
No? No council comments. Council meeting's over. Oh, we're adjourned, I'm sorry.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer.